Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 11th Planning and Zoning Commissioners meeting. If you can all take a moment and just rise and join me in the pledge, I'd appreciate it. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have quite a crowd here this evening. As people are signing up, I do want to explain that on the sign-up sheets, first of all, can you hear me okay? No. Okay. Any better? Okay. Good response. Thank you. The sign-up sheets are for each hearing that we'll be having. So if you're interested in speaking on any of the agenda items, please sign up, sign your name, check the appropriate boxes whether you want to speak, not speak, and such, so I would know when I read those names. I don't have to ask you what you want to do. So that would help me out a great deal. And the way it'll work tonight is each applicant for each hearing comes up, staff will come up, give us a presentation, then the applicant will come up and have about 30 minutes to give us some more information, and then you, the public, will have a chance to speak on whatever topic that is for that particular hearing. And you'll have about 5 minutes to give us some viewpoint of what your interests are. And then the applicant will come back up again and kind of address any of the items that might have come up. And then what we'll do is close the public hearing section, and then we'll go into discussion about that particular item. So that's how it will work. And I will just ask you for your name, and I'll swear you in, and then you can mention and say whatever you'd like at that particular point. That's it. So continue to sign in. There's plenty of seats. If you need another seat, there's some over on the other side. So at this time, Shannon, can we do roll call?
Messina?
Here.
Fleming? Here. Ingalls?
Here.
Lutrip?
Here.
Mandel? Here. Rumpler? Ward?
Thank you. Thank you. Need approval of the August 14th minutes, please.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. At this time, public comments will be heard for anything that isn't on the agenda. So if anyone wants to speak on anything that isn't on the agenda, you're welcome to come up. No? Okay, thank you. This time, Hillary, if you want to staff comments, thanks.
Commissioners, can you hear me? It sounds like yeah? Need a little more volume, please. Okay, great, thank you.
Now they can hear.
So just a few updates for you. So in October, we have 2 public hearing items. We have an annexation request that was going to be on tonight's agenda that's been postponed to the October meeting. And then we also have the zone change request, special use permit, and the limited design PUD that's coming in for that River's Edge apartment property, which is just west of the Atlas waterfront. Also wanted to give you some other updates on some projects we're working on. So East Sherman, we have launched a pilot project, it's going into effect this week. It's on the 1600 block of Sherman Avenue, so between 16th and 17th Streets. You can kind of see it here. And so we are testing out some of the concepts that came out of all the public involvement, what people would like to see on East Sherman. One of the big things is more parking, and so we're testing out diagonal parking on the south side of the street. There will remain the parallel parking on the north side. We have done some temporary curbing to show what it could look like if you extend the curbs, so calling them curb extensions, and then we've painted in some artistic crosswalks. So by having curb extensions, it shortens that crossing distance. We'll be adding some planters this week as well to kind of delineate the extents of that. There will be a parklet for outside seating out in front of Moontime, and then some other planters with landscaping materials and some benches along the corridor. I'll show you some other images so you can kind of see. So here's the parklet kind of at a more of a pedestrian scale. Here it is from more of kind of a bird's eye view. And it's started yesterday, and so they did all the striping revisions. You can kind of see here on the bottom right of the screen. There is some signage, actually I guess it's on this page, right before 15th Street, and then also on the east side of the project, letting people know that there is some traffic revisions ahead for the pilot project. And then there's some other indications with the signage and then the road paint as well, because you kind of have to maneuver the travel lanes since it's taking the center turn lane away from that block. So as you can see, last night and today, people are already using the new parking spaces. And so it's kind of exciting to see that come to fruition. We'll be having the 4th annual Parking on Sherman event will take place on the same block. I'll show you that slide next. But on the East Sherman website, so eastsherman.org/project, if you click on this little drop-down menu for project, there's details on the pilot project and all of the organizations, businesses, and individuals that are helping us make that project happen, and also details on other things happening on East Sherman as well as the 4th annual Parking It on Sherman event. So you guys have some flyers, and we've been distributing a lot of information about this event. It's taking place next Friday, September 21st from 4 to 9 p.m. Again, it'll be on that 1600 block of Sherman Avenue. We have some fun things happening this year. There is a Facebook page, so we're asking people to go to the Facebook page, show that they're interested or attending, and share it with their friends, just so we can kind of help keep account of how many people will be attending the event. And again, that's being made possible by a lot of generous sponsors and businesses along the corridor and volunteers. So that's all I have for staff comments. Oh, actually, one more. I'm sorry, I did add this one. This kind of aligns with this evening's, the first public hearing we have. There is tomorrow night an open house to get public input on the traffic study for Atlas Waterfront and for Riverstone. And so tomorrow night that is taking place. It's at North Idaho College in the Student Union Building, and it's Driftwood Bay. And the meeting is going to be kind of the open house format, so people can drop in between 5 and 7 p.m. to give input on that project.
All right, great. And do you need any volunteers helping on Sherman Avenue to set up, or?
We do. Several of you should have received emails today, but we will be sending an email to others that have asked to get updates on the project so that they can sign up to help. We'll need some help with setup, staffing the event, some of the booths, and cleanup. And we might need a little help with the pilot project this week, but I think we're mostly covered for that.
And what about time if you were interested in helping set up? What would be?
We're going to be starting at 1 in the afternoon.
Okay.
And then
Great.
the event opens to the public at 4 p.m.
Oh, great. Thanks, Hillary.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank you.
it. Okay. On the first, item tonight is the applicant is the city of Coeur d'Alene. It's a zoning prior to annexation. And Hillary will be giving us the presentation.
Okay, great. So if you recall, I was here about a year ago. So at that time, the applicant was different. We had Bad Axe LLC. The city has since purchased this property. So the request this evening is for the zoning prior to annexation. And so the Planning Commission's role in this is really to help assign zoning for the property. And then this will go on to the city council, and city council will make the ultimate determination on whether the property should be annexed and what the zoning will be. But the applicant and owner are both the city of Coeur d'Alene. And this time around as well, so in addition to the Atlas Waterfront parcel, we have included a section of the Spokane River and the shoreline, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But the acreages are listed here, so it's about 48 acres of land, which is comprised of the Atlas Waterfront property, and about 46 acres of the river. And the requested zoning is C-17 for the land and navigable water for the river. So a little background, as I mentioned, I was here about a year ago, so it was last August this request came before the commission. We didn't include the river at that time because we didn't really think about it. And as we've been doing a lot more work on kind of conceptual design for the site, working with regulatory agencies, we realized it would be really beneficial to bring in the section of the shoreline along the property, but also to tie together the existing city limits lines. And so this request includes tying together a section of the river that's 75 feet wide, and it would extend to the west end of Mill River, and then it would connect to where the city limits lines are just south of 95 Bridge, and I'll show you some maps about that. So it's so that we could do shoreline stabilization efforts. It also is going to enable more response by the police and the fire departments, not only on Atlas waterfront, but along the rest of that shoreline that we're bringing in, and so that'll help in terms of providing more consistent enforcement of city codes. So again, kind of mentioned the city is officially the owner of the Atlas waterfront now. We do have a website dedicated, or a web page on the city's website dedicated to the Atlas waterfront with all the information on there. This has been updated to reflect that we're the city. On the website, you can click this link, and the news log will take people to kind of a blog, and it shows the most current information at the bottom of the log, as well as presentations that have been done. And this here kind of talks about the efforts that the city's been doing in conjunction with Ignite CDA, the city's urban renewal agency, on evaluating the property, doing some conceptual design work, financial feasibility, and basically preparing an urban renewal plan for the property. Here is the preliminary project schedule that has been presented recently by Phil Boyd of Welch Comer to Ignite. So this kind of shows where we are right now, and this is that annexation process, and the navigable water zoning was mapping that area and including that in this request. And then as you can see, there's a lot of other steps that are yet to happen in the process. The urban renewal process is scheduled to be completed at the end of this year, and then there'll be some additional kind of design work, and then looking at doing some shoreline stabilization starting this fall while we have the low water on the property, and then looking at doing some going out to bid on a portion of some of the land for development, and that'll be a phased project. So here's the location map of the annexation request. As I mentioned, the Atlas waterfront site here is south of Celtice Way. Here's Riverstone to the east. Here's the River's Edge property, and here is Mill River. And then, of course, it's right along the Spokane River. Here, this blue line here indicates that 75-foot swath of the river and shoreline that is being requested at this time as well. Again, the Atlas waterfront property. Legal notices were all met. We posted this site. Annexations don't require that you post a site, but we wanted to make sure community was informed. So we did 4 locations where we posted notices about the public hearing, and so wanted to make sure that it was in the areas where it also touched along the shoreline. And then we also met the legal requirements for publishing in the press. Again, here's kind of the aerial photo of the site. Here is the area that we call Mount Hink that has kind of some of the waste, the remains from when it was logged in the mill site. Here is showing the mill site in 1999, the full extent of it, and here's showing the subject property over what was the mill site, so it doesn't encompass the whole site. Annexation history map, so as you can see, this is kind of a variety of different years. There's been annexation requests dating back to '79 over here, and then the more recent ones were the city's annexation of the railroad right-of-way that we own, and then the River's Edge property here and here. And then these ones are the Riverstone properties. This is the annexation history map showing some of the river, and so we've talked about that before as well. So this one in '95 was for the Blackwell RV Park, and then this was Blackwell Island in 2016. So existing zoning, so the site is currently county industrial, surrounded by C-17 primarily, little R-12, and then this is approved for the R-34 density special use permit on the River's Edge parcel that was the former Stimson office. Existing zoning in the water, the navigable water really is the only zoning that's appropriate over a water body, and so that's indicated here. Proposed zoning, as I mentioned, so C-17 for the land, and then the navigable water for the river. And so now I'll start walking through the findings for annexation. So there's 4 findings required for an annexation request. And so the first one is B8, that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And so as you can see here, it's in the Spokane River District. And so the site is outlined here in white, and then of course the river section is also within the Spokane River District of the comprehensive plan. It's also within an area considered for transition, and so because these former mill sites have been vacant for years, similar with what's happened on the surrounding properties and Riverstone to the east, they're expected to have changes over the years, and so this makes sense for the Atlas waterfront, that it would be considered in the transition zone. There are 4 comprehensive plan goals, and all 4 of them do relate to the project and to the request. So the first one is the natural environment, second one is related to the economic environment, third is home environment, and fourth is the administrative environment. And I have several slides that kind of talk about that. There's 28, I believe there might even be one additional one now as well that's included in your staff report, but there are several objectives that relate to each of those goals, and I've underlined those here, but I think, largely just kind of involving the public, protecting the waterfront, protecting public access to the waterfront. Those are kind of all the main things. And then anytime there's the natural terrain, protecting the natural vegetation and taking into consideration drainage, design issues, of course. The parks is a big one, in recreation, open space as well. Connectivity, that's a big part of this Atlas waterfront project. Transportation needs, the neighborhoods, kind of making sure it's compatible with surrounding neighborhoods, managing our growth, and then, of course, more of the city administration side on making good decisions and being financially savvy. Business image, so again, if there's a mix of businesses that would be within the Atlas waterfront and economic development, these ones fit well with the request as well. So the site also, because it's along the Spokane River, is subject to the shoreline ordinance. And so this map shows the 150-foot shoreline boundary, and that's the extent of this, kind of the turquoise blue. And then the 40-foot shoreline is the no construction area. By doing a planned unit development, you can do some work within the shoreline as well as requesting the possibility of docks. So some other things that are outlined in the staff report, this hasn't changed from last year's presentation either, are that there was a Spokane River Corridor Advisory Committee formed in 2013. It was an ad hoc committee that kind of reviewed some of these Spokane River properties and came back with a recommendation to City Council. The City Council adopted a resolution in 2014 that's listed here, and the intent was really to maximize public acquisition of the riverfront property, protecting the riverfront, and doing comprehensive planning. And then there are the 6 CDA 2030 action items that are related. These are similar to some of the comprehensive plan objectives. So environment and recreation, there's one related to open space preservation programming and implementing the Coeur d'Alene Parks Master Plan in terms of acquiring and preserving open space for the public. There's one related to recreational lands acquisition, similar to the previous one, so identifying a funding mechanism to purchase diverse city land acquisitions to expand recreation offerings and achieve conservation. There's one related to the parkland expansion and maintenance, so similar to the previous 2. One on environment and recreation that's talking about public beaches and accessibility for disabled, and also considering an off-leash water dog area. Growth and development, there's one related to preserving the view corridors, and that's similar to the comprehensive plan. And then the growth and development, one related to lakefront and riverfront public access. So requiring public access to the lake and riverfronts for all new developments. So the next finding is B9, and that is that the public facilities and utilities are or are not available and adequate for public use. And so a lot of these comments are similar from what you saw last year. All of the departments reviewed this and were able to provide feedback that there are public facilities and utilities available and adequate to serve the requested annexations with the zoning to the C-17, and there were no objections. We do have some updated comments from Streets and Sewer, so from our city engineer for streets. Basically just kind of updating this to reflect that the Celtice Way is newly reconstructed, and that this site fronts on Celtice Way. And then related to the sewer, we received this from Mike Becker in the wastewater department, just kind of updating the information about how it would be designed to connect to the wastewater, how it would drain to connect to the Mill River pump station, and that there's a surcharge fee that's applicable to that. And then talking about the capacity. So no concerns with ability to serve the property. Celtice Way revitalization, I couldn't get any updated photos in time, but the Celtice Way project is largely done. There's just some final landscaping and some other smaller items related to the bus shelters and things like that that need to be addressed, but Celtice Way is is up and running, and the speed limit has been adjusted back to the normal 35 miles an hour. Here's a wastewater master plan. You saw this slide last year, so this is really just showing where does the wastewater exist and how the site could tie into that. And then we've also included the Trails and Bikeway Master Plan information. Again, the trail connectivity is a big one that's already been looked at for the Atlas waterfront, trails along Celtice Way, and then more of the water trails, which is more for, say, paddleboarding or kayaking or other water use. A topographic map here on finding B10, so this is your third finding, that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. And so this site does have a little bit of topography, but it's nothing that would be of concern for an annexation or for future development. There's ways to develop the site and take advantage of the topography. There's a preliminary survey map included in the packet for you, and a floodplain map just kind of showing the areas where the floodplain does go into the property, and this is kind of an inlet that exists. Site photos, so this is Riverstone here. This is the Centennial and Prairie Trail going, this is north this direction. This is the east side of the property looking south toward the river here. Here's a property, or a picture kind of more interior to the site looking south toward the river. Again, the same kind of piles from a different direction looking north at the Atlas roundabout location. Here's looking up kind of the stepped area, which is the former Stimson's office site. So that's looking north. Here's one kind of turned around looking back south at the river. Here's one looking southwest. This fence property is a River's Edge property on the far west of the site. Again, looking southwest toward the river. And here's one looking back from that same location, looking back southeast. Here's one of the former railroad right-of-way that traverses through the property going east-west. And then here's kind of an area where there is a natural inlet existing. So finding B11, that the proposal would or would not adversely affect surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and or existing land uses. So an updated comment from Chris Bosley, city engineer. The proposed annexation would not likely adversely affect Celtice Way with regard to traffic, as it has the capacity to accommodate additional traffic generated from the subject site. However, a traffic study is underway to fully understand the possible impacts from the additional traffic on Celtice Way and the nearby street network. And as I mentioned under staff comments, there is this opportunity tomorrow for the public to provide input into the traffic study, and so I already provided the details of that. It's at NIC tomorrow evening. Generalized land use patterns, so the property here, it's largely kind of vacant former mill site. You saw the photos of that. Surrounding uses are largely kind of a mix of densities of residential. We have vacant to the west, and then we have some commercial within Riverstone and some commercial to the north, on the north side of Celtice Way. Here is a conceptual plan for Atlas Waterfront. Just wanted to include this. The annexation doesn't tie it to this, but this is just to kind of help everybody understand what's been looked at as part of the design work and the financial feasibility that's being done as part of the urban renewal plan for Atlas. And so this really shows, this is the big part of this is really dedicating the swath of land for public use. So this green belt would have trails. There's a thought that there would be separated bike and pedestrian paths, and this area would be really open space. There's been talk of having some kind of more day use docking for the public to come and to experience the park and the commercial, like a restaurant pad in this area. A mix of housing, so some single-family detached, some townhouses, some apartment, flat, or condo type buildings, and then some business opportunities over here, so it could either be for offices or for retail or restaurants. And so that's just kind of the current concept right now. The numbers on here indicate the phasing. This one here is really to be determined. That's shown as a possible future connection, but there's been no approval by City Council or Ignite. That's just been looked at, and I know there's some individuals here this evening that have expressed some concerns with that, and that's not indicated as phasing because that's really is unknown at this time. So annexation of the shoreline with the navigable water zoning, I already talked about this, but just wanted to include this under the finding because it is important for us to address bringing in this section of the shoreline with the annexation at this time. The C-17 zoning district, really, it's kind of the broadest of the zoning districts. It allows for the residential as well as more of the commercial uses. We've talked about that this would be an appropriate zoning, but we would want to limit that through the planned unit development process to kind of limit the types of uses, maybe the density, maybe the heights of the residential uses. Navigable water, it is the only zoning district that can be over water, and so this kind of describes the uses. You'll also see in some of the recommendations for the annexation agreement, it really does address that you still need to comply with these other regulatory agencies. So it doesn't take away the other regulatory agencies, their enforcement, or the fact that Department of Land still regulates the riverbed. And so last year, we had modified kind of the list of items that I'd like to send forward to the City Council for consideration in the annexation agreement. So I've updated the packet, and the presentation here tonight includes all of those. I did include a proposed change under 11, and that is that the Planning Commission recommends restricting any residential development along the shoreline from and including the former railroad right-of-way, not including the spur south of the river, instead of saying elimination of any residential development, because there's no residential development currently proposed. So kind of a slight nuance to that, just to clarify the intent of this item in the annexation agreement. And then I did also add these last two. These were the same ones that were included in the Blackwell Island annexation that had navigable water, just to make it certain that Idaho Department of Lands and the other regulatory agencies would still have a say in what happens in the river. So those are the items there. And then we did receive one comment letter from Chet Gady, and his language was asking the Planning Commission to make a finding, and I won't go into verbatim, but the intent is here that the primary purpose of the annexation is to ensure the shoreline of the property is to be forever owned by the City of Coeur d'Alene for use and benefit of the public. And so this seemed to make sense to be something you might want to consider as well for another item for the annexation agreement. So I wanted to include it. And the decision point tonight is really the city's asking for approval of zoning prior to annexation for the C-17 for the approximately 48 acres of the Atlas waterfront from the county industrial to that C-17, and then requesting approval of zoning prior to annexation of that navigable water zoning for the approximately 46 acres of the Spokane River along the shoreline. And these are your action alternatives this evening to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. So stand for any questions.
I do. Relating to the recommendations to the City Council, number
Yes.
9, which is the specify that the plat will need a 40-foot and 150-foot shoreline setbacks. If you can go back to that,
Yes.
not the plot, but the layout of
One that
what-
shows that map and how it,
Yeah.
okay. Let's see, how far, here we go, this one. Is that the
Okay,
one, or
on
are you
that
wanting
one,
the
but I was-
concept,
yeah,
conceptual
the-
design?
If you can show, perhaps clarity, for clarification, the 40-foot setback and the 150-foot shoreline setback, because it says here to show that, as well as number 11, which is another, the Planning Commission recommends that the elimination of any residential development along the shoreline from and including the former railroad right-of-way. So if you can, I'm trying to get to it so maybe everybody can have a visualization of what is going to stay undeveloped with the 40-foot, 150-foot, and the right-of-way,
Okay.
because I'm sure that's going to be brought up at some point in time. Yeah, if you can go on that map.
So I don't know the exact dimensions of this area yet, but I think largely the railroad spur kind of goes through in this area. So I think this is consistent with what that one is that's kind of south of the railroad spur would not be developed. So it might, be a little tighter here, but then it's a lot larger area here that's dedicated to the green
Okay.
belt.
All right, so basically, everything from where the green is up there, number 2, and the 1 and 3, all that, whatever color you want to call that, that's all going to be open space, undeveloped, no residential or anything like that, and that's at least 150 feet in some areas?
In some areas, I think it's tighter in some other areas, so it does kind of, it varies a little bit. The intent of the other one is really just to say that the shoreline ordinance applies, but a PUD could, allow for some of that flexibility in terms of where you can do some development in the
Okay.
shoreline area. But the only development that would be in there would be this commercial pad that's shown here.
Right,
There's been talk that maybe some additional restaurant sites could be here, and then maybe some of these uses would change, so.
right.
this
And
is
there was
really-
talk about some perhaps kiosks or something like that
Right,
for
yep.
public use and things
Right,
of that
we
nature.
talked about that.
Okay. Now, that was my only question.
And all these setbacks are set off the 100-year flood, the
So the
water.
high water mark
The-
is how we
And
have
we've
it.
marked that, we have a dedicated,
So it's different, yeah, we have it in the code, so there's, yeah.
okay.
John, you have some?
Thanks, Hillary, thank you. A couple refresher questions here, real quick. The city owns this property.
City does own the property, yes.
The city closed and it's ours,
It
right?
is.
So it's kind of a no-brainer to annex it since
Right.
it's ours. So the question is zoning. And at the earlier hearing, we heard some opinions that it ought to be R1, pretty tight, restricted to C17. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, everybody up here landed on the notion that C17 coupled with recommendation that we have listed there for a requirement for a PUD, kind of, C17 gives maximum flexibility, but the PUD process, which becomes a refinement of the concept plan, does it not?
Yes.
And that at some point it gets locked in, and so the PUD gives the control that everyone in the public feels they need to have in this process, so that this doesn't go off the rails and,
Right.
and it becomes
And the
something
concern
bad.
with the R1 we talked about before was, a lot of, other than the areas that are going to be preserved as the green belt and the open space for public use, that some of the site does need to be developed. And so if we have an R1, that's probably going to scare off a lot of the development community because it's very restrictive in what could be done. And so the C17 with the PUD, kind of, having the sideboards for it, limiting what exactly could be done and providing the vision for the site was what was discussed as kind of the most ideal.
And correct me, but there was a fair amount of dialogue. There was a term for it, third person, third party,
Third
something.
place? Third place.
Third place.
Third place, thank you very much. Third place opportunities.
Yes.
And I think, personally, I think that's a value here, is some places that would be open to the public, but, they're of a commercial nature. With the pad that you have delineated there for commercial opportunities, third place opportunities, are those in jeopardy of this gentleman Chet's recommended comment about no, or the city owning, the waterfront into perpetuity and whatnot? I like his comment. Are those compatible?
I think it is, and I'm sure Chet would like to kind of clarify his intent, but I think this would be carved out, it would be platted as a commercial pad, and the open space would wrap around it. So,
It looks like it sits back
It
enough
does.
that maybe there'd be some compatibility there, I would
Right.
hope. I like his comment, I like the recommendation. I think we ought to adopt it as a recommendation to council. And as long as we could achieve both objectives of having third place opportunities and own the waterfront, I think that'd be great.
right, and I think, to point out too, some of these other uses and, the exact intensity or the layout could all change. The concept was really critical as part of the urban renewal planning process to make sure that the numbers are going to work. But the biggest thing that the council has said all along, as well as Ignite, is let's lock in this open space for the public to make sure that there's access to the waterfront for the public.
Thank you.
Okay. Hold on, Pete. I've got a clarification. There's a possibility that some of this land, not the shore, might be sold, perhaps to other third, what do we call it? Party or third.
Place.
What was it, third place?
Third place, or commercial, just plain
Commercial. And if that does happen, and someone wants to develop something, they would have to come back with a PUD, different than what might be approved down the road? Or how does that work if something is sold from the cities, that we own all that right now?
So the annexation agreement would most likely include that provision that we talked about, that a PUD has to be developed. And so it's more likely that we would probably develop a PUD for the whole site. That hasn't been determined yet, and then allow some flexibility so that, if each of these are kind of sold off to different developers, that it all kind of makes sense in the big scheme of things, but still allow some, some ability for them to change things, but have more, maybe the network, the road network and some of the other uses are kind of locked in. But yes, there would be other shots at it. They would have to come back, and there would have to be some compatibility with what's conceived here.
All right, when you say compatibility, and we have that, and we approve this, and let's say that's the PUD that goes along with the approval, someone buys something and they want to change that, is that going to be something that staff is going to say, oh yeah, that's not a major change, or is it going to come back to us? Because I really don't want to see another Riverstone happen, where there were so many changes, and we didn't have, well, the public didn't have a chance to say, wait a minute, this is not quite what should be down there.
So we've talked about making sure that we build in some flexibility so that not every small thing has to require a trip back to the commission for an amendment. But I think if it's how it is now, if there's a substantial change, it would have to come back to the commission. So we're still kind of just getting through this phase of it, and then once the PUD is developed, then I guess we're going to make sure that we build in some of that protection.
My personal feeling, and the rest of the commissioners can comment it, I would like to see any changes come back to us.
Okay.
So, okay, Pete, you're next.
Well, I think you asked my question, but I'll ask. So who will form the PUD? The city?
The city, working with Ignite and a consultant team, would most likely be the ones to create the PUD.
So the city will have. And secondly, the open space we're talking about, that will not be impinged upon with any PUD or whatnot.
With any development, you're right. So it would be, most likely, we would end up platting it as a tract, I think makes the most sense for the open space, so that can't be, so someone can't come back in and try and develop it. Is that what you're asking?
So tonight we have an agreement on what the open space is and all that. Can, at a later time, can somebody come back and say, now through a PUD process, we're going to make this open space something else?
Well, so tonight, we're not here with the PUD, we're just here with the annexation request. So I think some of those details are going to get worked out. But I think the more protection you put into the annexation agreement, such as dedicating a certain area for the open space and not allowing development, I think that's important.
I certainly agree with you, Mr. Chair, that anything more comes back, because I think this open space is a critical item for all of us.
Does the PUD, now with the inclusion of the waterway, the segment of the Spokane River, does the PUD also include that segment?
It would include, yeah, we'll have to look at how that is. It's more intended to be included just for the shoreline stabilization efforts.
Yep.
And it would allow for the docks, so it would probably do that. I don't know how far it would extend. I don't think it would, PUD probably wouldn't go the full extent of that, what's included in the annexation for the river. But it would probably at least address for here.
Okay.
When you say the annexation request, that would be the 40-foot setback along the water's edge, correct?
For the annexation request, can you clarify your question?
I'm sorry,
please?
so if you get into the PUD, you have the 40-foot
Oh,
setback.
right,
That
yes,
would be part
yes.
of the PUD.
Correct. So the PUD allows people to do some work within the shoreline and also to do docks.
Yeah, it'd be the 40 feet and 150 feet back.
I just want to make sure
Yeah.
we're clear on
Because
that.
otherwise, the shoreline ordinance restricts construction activities.
Any questions? All right, Hillary, thank you very much, appreciate it. Before we continue a public hearing on this, any commissioners have a conflict of interest in this particular? Okay, oh, all right, thanks. I have a number of people that did sign up. Some indicated that they wanted to speak, some didn't indicate if they wanted to speak or not. So when I do call your names, if you change your mind that you do want to speak and you didn't check off the box, feel free to come up and give us your 2 cents worth. The first person to call is Mark Hall, and he was in favor, and he does want to speak. And I just need your first name, and I'll swear you in.
Mark Hall.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go right ahead. Thank you.
Well, I am in favor of the project. I think it's going to be a great addition to the city. My only concern, this is going to be a brief comment, is how it impacts the Riverstone development traffic-wise. And I guess we're going to learn more tomorrow about that. But it seems to me that Riverstone already has some traffic issues, and we don't need more impact with that.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for taking care of business here, and it seems like you're going to make a great annexation on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Clark Emerson is opposed, and he does want to speak. State your name.
Clark Emerson.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Well, go right ahead. Thank you.
I had to say opposed because I think there's a lot of loose ends here. And I think you point out some of the pitfalls of this annexation, and that is the PUD. I've been a developer for 20 years, and I'm on the other side of the fence right now. As a developer, we would use a PUD to figure out every way we could to maximize density, to minimize our costs to develop the project, and so on and so forth. I live down on Bellarive Lane, and we have homes down there that have built that are built that do not have driveway aprons, that people park on the sidewalk, which is just unbelievable to me. So, notwithstanding the traffic study, which I am very interested in finding out more about that tomorrow, but I think the one thing you could do as commissioners is really put in place an understanding of the PUD as part of the annexation, where developers can't come in and manipulate through their acquaintances, their contacts within the city to work the project to their benefit, which in the long run will be a detriment to the public. It's extremely important. We have homes built down there with carriage homes that are available for rent that don't have any parking at all. In my world, I don't know how that has ever happened, but it is happening. And you have 46 more acres here with hundreds of potential projects within PUDs that are going to be a nightmare if these things aren't laid out prior to, or at least part of the annexation. Thank you.
I've got a question. Does
Sure.
Bellarive have a design review also that they have to submit for all the homes and where they sit on
Sure,
kind of
sure.
thing? And
But in
doesn't
the
that
end, it
take-
goes through the city.
Excuse me?
In the end, the city had to permit it.
Well, they have to get the permit, but doesn't the design review sometimes overshadow what the city requirements might be because of what the design review committee or the people who form that say what can be or can't be put on that property?
That's a good question. I mean, the design review committee, in my opinion, shouldn't circumvent city building requirements, and I would have to believe that the city should require some type of parking apron out in front of a garage. To let people park on a public sidewalk or private sidewalk that endangers the rest of the public is just beyond my understanding. And that's only, one of the many issues that you will be faced, and you brought up you would like to see everything come back as a change. If some of these things can be part of the annexation, then the developer going in will know what at least the bare minimums are. Mm-hmm. And that would save a lot of people, including the planning department and the city building department, a lot of headache.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I appreciate your comments.
Yeah,
thank you very
you.
much. I'll make note, I appreciate anyone's enthusiasm, whether you agree or don't agree, or clapping, or saying anything that supports or doesn't support someone's comments, but please keep it to yourself and don't do that again. Thank you. Next person I have is Nancy Harvey, and she is opposed and she does not want to speak. No? Okay. Next is William Boga, and is opposed and did not indicate whether or not, did not want to speak. Joanne Nelson, you're in favor. Do you not wish to speak? Okay. Ruth Pratt, you are in favor and you do wish to speak. Okay. Just state your name.
Ruth Pratt.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. I am a resident currently of a neighborhood in Riverstone, and many of my neighbors are here this evening because we have, for some time now, as Hillary knows, she's heard this song before, been concerned about the preliminary plans coming forward. First of all, let me say that I'm definitely in favor of the annexation. I think it has the potential to provide wonderful continuation of a green belt and public open space. We certainly realize that there has to be some development down there in order to help offset some of the costs. But we have a number of concerns, and I don't know, Hillary, can you put that slide back up that was the latest conceptual one that you had? That one. Whoop, yeah, that one. So we have seen a number of iterations based on preliminary plans by Welsh Comer for this development, and we understand that nothing is settled yet, but those of the members of all of the neighborhoods in Riverstone and the Riverstone Master Association and the Centennial Trail Foundation and a lot of other groups are very concerned, particularly as it impacts the Centennial Trail as it goes through Riverstone. At one point in time, and I don't know if you can see that, the gray area going by Riverstone, which makes it look like that the Centennial Trail has been turned into a road and will be moved. That is our biggest concern. That trail is currently a hub for 5 different areas to come into it. Will continue to be a hub as it's developed through the Atlas Mill site. We're concerned about that. We're concerned about removal of all of the trees along there that would have to happen if that did occur, and the incredible expense of doing that. But the traffic study, of course, is paramount to making decisions about that, when we all plan to attend that meeting or those open houses as well. But we just wanted to state our extreme concern about really the intactness of the trail as it runs through and by Riverstone, another city park there, that not become a thoroughfare or some major connectivity point into the new Atlas Mill site. So just wanted to once again make those statements.
Ruth, I've got a question. When you're talking about the existing path there, is that the one that's the black asphalt?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that one, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you know, there are a number of, there's like there's the Belle Reve private street that goes through there in front of Belle Reve at the bottom, but that does not continue, and it's private. Then there's the train bed on the lower side. Mm-hmm. And then you go up the hill, and then there's a Centennial Trail up the hill. Right. So again, our concern is that the trail be left intact. And we're concerned, of course, about density, because you know that traffic study is going to show that something has to happen to alleviate traffic there. It's terrible along that whole area. But we'll be making those statements as well. So thanks for hearing us.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Next is Jim Van Sky, and is neutral and did not indicate whether or not you want to speak.
They've already said it.
I'm sorry?
I think the concerns that I was going to share have already been said.
Okay. Thank you. Lloyd and Gracie Stewart is opposed, did not indicate.
I'm
if I can get there.
Okay. Okay, Lloyd,
Yes.
can you just state your name?
Okay, Lloyd Stewart.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have the same concerns that Ruth does. And you can see the gray area that is the existing Centennial Trail. Our house is the first one that is right on the trail. And plus, I'm one of probably 10 to 15 wheelchair users that use that trail daily. I'm on it about 3 to 5 times a day. And if that was to turn into a road, I would have to move. There's no doubt about it. And I built a wheelchair house there. I was told when the house was built, it was sold, that it would be on the Centennial Trail. I talked to Marty in the city, who is, I guess, Trails Coordinator? Monty, yeah. He assured me that that once you have a trail, it doesn't ever go away. On our house, in order to gain access to the trail, I went to the city, and no less than 5 department heads signed off for us to do a paved path from our backyard right onto the trail. Cost me $3,000. And if that was ever turned into a road again, it would destroy my life. And I just think that it would be good. Plus, you had mentioned that the access to the Atlas site, you specifically stated Celtice. You didn't bring up that possibly the Centennial Trail being taken out. And you also didn't mention Suzanne, which is planned to be an access into it, which is shown, that little crooked one up there. So I just, plus I'm sure that 150 feet probably goes into the Centennial Trail anyway, the existing one, if you go from the waterfront. And to put a road there would definitely be development. So I'm just, my opposition is not to the project, it's to doing anything with the existing Centennial Trail.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure Hillary will kind of give some clarification at the end of public testimony on the trail situation. Thank you. Next is Spencer Curtis, supposed, and he did not want to speak. Karen Schauer did not give any indication. You good? Oh, I'm sorry. And you didn't give any indication whether you're opposed or not, or? Okay. Thank you. If you want to speak, you can come up to the podium. No? No? Okay. Thank you. Sandy Richard did not wish to testify. Glenn Avery is opposed and did not want to testify. Kathy Grothman is opposed, does not want to testify. Roger Smith is in favor and does want to say a few words. Can you state your name, Roger, please?
Thank you. Roger Smith.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Several of us here tonight have been dealing with the issue of the old mill sites for quite some time. We've come to call it the once and forever opportunity, as I know you've already heard from us before. I just wanted to emphasize that the Planning Commission, the good news is you have a lot of power here. You have a council resolution that was adopted and giving very specific direction to preserve public acquisition of that shoreline area, to keep public access available, and to include comprehensive planning. And I think that comprehensive planning element is an umbrella under which the concerns of the previous citizens about wheelchair access and a road taking out the bike trail That's part of comprehensive planning. So that will come, I think, as part of having continuity with adjacent development. That will come later, I think, probably not in your bailiwick tonight. Also, under that umbrella will come compatibility with the River's Edge development proposed just west of there. I want to second the idea of preserving as public land and city-owned public land all of the land between the current railroad right-of-way and the river. You've received input on that multiple times. A more recent letter by Mr. Gady also promoted that idea, and I think you're kind of on board with that brown area along the waterfront, everything from the water side of the railroad should be public land. The big question, I think, and we're hearing it tonight, is the question of the PUDs. And one in my mind is should, and it's come up tonight too, should there be a single large PUD, maybe that the city puts together for the grand mill site whole area, or do we leave it to multiple individual PUDs prepared by whatever developer buys phase 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever private developer comes in there with a scheme to develop something, should the PUD be left to that developer? That's a question I have too. I don't know the answer really, but it seems to make sense that there be some kind of a grand PUD up front that the city creates so that developers prior to purchase, as the other gentleman said, would know what they're getting into, what the limitations are. So that's a huge question, I think. I guess it kind of falls on you guys to some extent, or maybe you can kick that one down the road to the council, but I'm all in favor of the annexation. The city owns the land. Kudos to the city for purchasing that mill site. But preserving the public access and public ownership of that waterfront, very important element. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chet Gady, and he does want to speak. He's in favor. State name, and I'll swear you in.
Chet Gady.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Roger covered a lot of the stuff that I was going to say, but I want to clarify some things first. At the last meeting, I submitted a letter also, and in that letter, I said a condition of annexation should be that the shoreline to include the right-of-way and everything south of the right-of-way to the river should remain public. Okay, and this time I tried to simplify that, because as soon as you say that, you go, well, do you include the spur? And what if it wants to be, what if this plan didn't quite go out to it, and that got pretty hard? So this time I'd like to simplify my request. That other request still stands, but I'd like to simplify it and just have someone up there make a motion tonight that a condition of annexation say that the shoreline is to remain public in perpetuity. And I'm not defining what the shoreline is. This will do a couple things to solve some other problems that I see with this development. You're talking about the shoreline protecting ordinance and the 40 feet and 150 feet and how it got screwed up in Belle Reve and all of those things. Well, that ordinance doesn't apply to the city. So if the city owns that property, you don't have to worry about that. The one little commercial property, if I can find it, right there, even if that went out to the water, if the city owned that property and developed it under a lease, then the shoreline protection ordinance wouldn't apply. So you could build those docks, okay? So that's the simple thing that I'm asking you to do, is just simply make that motion that it's going to remain public. If you're going to go the extra mile and say everything from the right-of-way to the river remains public, I'll cheer when it's appropriate, okay?
Okay.
In the conditions of annexation, it wasn't clear to me, because this is a very complicated thing now that's been building up and building up and building up. And this is sort of an add-on to the meeting we did a year ago. So I wasn't sure if the river, the water property, was included in the recommendation and items 1 through 13. So I think you might want to clarify that that does not apply to the river. That applies to the Atlas Mill site. That might make that more clear. An interesting thing, if you make that navigable waters and you put it in that whole way, you have to do some considerations about what about the other places like Belle Rive and Mill River. What impact is that going to have on them? I'm more familiar with Mill River because I live there than I am Belle Rive. But can Mill River then say, hey, we're going to put a dock on our private beach? Okay, there's already a PUD, so we're not sure whether the shoreline protection stuff goes. And the definition of navigable water says, you know, normal use. So can we go back and put a dock on there? So be careful with that. I'm not against it. I think it's a great idea, and I understand why the city wants to do it. And I understand if you're going to go all the way to the I-9, or not the I-95, we're raising the importance of that road, to the 95 bridge, there's a lot of land up there that's not developed. That I think it's part of the Four Corners project, and we don't know what's going to happen there. So just think that through of what that happens when you make that, because if it's, I can build a dock that never really touches the shore, and it might be approved by right. So you might want to be careful with that one. The PUDs, I think Roger started to say it, and maybe you should be clarifying it that any development requires a PUD, which does what you'd like it to do, Mr. Chairman, because it brings everything back to you. But I think one PUD probably doesn't work. That might have been appropriate a year ago when Bad Axe owned it, the city was going to buy it, and somebody was going to come in and make a plan that looked just like this and develop it. But watching this plan develop through Welch Comer and Ignite and City Council, some of those phases are years out. And so the market may change. So they might want to change from proposed townhouses to single-family homes or to condominiums, because it's got to pencil out. They've got to make it. You got to make enough money. Otherwise the city, is getting in trouble. So maybe if the requirement instead of a big PUD would be a PUD prior to any development. So when phase one is going to be developed, they submit their PUD to you, and you can be specific, and it's going to be developed soon, and you could do something like that. I don't know how to word that, but I think that would be more appropriate. This being a master plan, if the city says, I want townhouses, doesn't have to be in the annexation agreement. The city can put that in a deed restriction. When they sell Area 4 to Builder Joe Blow, and the city says, we want 16-story condominiums in there, they can put that in the deed restriction. Okay, so there are other ways to handle that. A single PUD, I think, is awkward for everyone. Let me see if I had anything else. Thank you for the proposed clarification on where you're going to build your houses, and I hope you adopt that. So thank you very much. I think this is a great project. I'm happy to see it going forward. These are just a few little tweaks that I thought
hold on
might
for
be.
a second. I got a question for legal. Make you part of this meeting. With some of the statements we just heard, with that first one that the city owns the piece of property and, all right, we cannot develop it, but it's got to stay open space. Some of the other things, because I'm sure some of this is going to come up later in our discussion, can we or can't we adopt any of those particular items and say this is what we'd like in our findings?
Well, the commission's duty here is simply to set the zoning for when city council votes on annexation and directs council legal department to create the annexation agreement. Commission can make recommendations if they wish to voice their opinion on those things. But again, all the commission is doing tonight is voting on what the zoning will be when the property is annexed into the city.
Through city council.
through city council. And there are some legal restrictions regarding tying public property up, private property up forever. I'm not sure that we will be able to do that. You can look at the pictures on the wall here and how things have changed over the last 100 years. We don't know what things will look like in 100 years either. So those are all considerations the city council will have to consider.
So,
And what I'm
go
asking
ahead.
the commission to do is to make those recommendations to council. I'm aware that you're not writing the annexation agreement.
All right, okay. So those recommendations, if this commission would like that, we can.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chet. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much again. And thank you.
Next, I have Terry and Sheila Schelling. I'm sorry. Did not wish to speak. Ron Ayers is in favor, did not indicate whether you'd want to speak or not. Okay. I have Lynn and Bill Gantz, I'm sorry, does not wish to speak. Okay. And last, I have Sarah Shaw, who is opposed and did not wish to speak. Okay. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You want to come up and say something?
Yes.
Sure, come on up. As they say, come on down. Just state your name and I'll swear you in.
Sarah Shaw,
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
So I have to admit, I am coming with not a lot of education about the whole process on this, but we live not far away. We use the trail all the time. I was born and raised in Coeur d'Alene and then moved away for 25 years and moved back. And what I want you to consider before any vote is done is look around you, because I've lived in Los Angeles, the Midwest, and other places, and look at the beauty that we have here and what is attracting people. And development is fine, but what I'm hearing is some of the projects along the river, and it's amazing the development we've seen in 4 years, have gone awry or there have been more than what was anticipated before. I just say, really think about, we can't undo it. Once it's done, it's done. So really plan for preserving the beauty of the riverfront along with making development to make it economically feasible. And I just want to make sure people really have that in their heart when they're voting. Coeur d'Alene is a majestic, unique place, and we want to make sure that that stays this way. That's all.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That was the last person I had on the list. If anyone wishes to speak on this particular item that didn't sign up, come on. Oh, you, oh.
So I was sworn in already.
Yes, just state your name one more time for the record.
I was hoping a lot more people would
Just
testify.
state your name.
Clark Emerson.
Thank you. Sorry.
One thing that I heard tonight is, or at least what I understood is, a lot of you may not be as familiar with PUDs. The other thing that you may not be familiar with is traffic studies. There are about no less than 10 different kinds of traffic studies, so I don't know until tomorrow night what kind of traffic study was done. But we used to have to do traffic studies anywhere from 6 months to a year. I was a developer in King County, Washington, which any of you go to Seattle, you understand what a nightmare us developers have created over there. But one traffic study that would be really beneficial is a manual traffic study that actually observes people's driving habits. The driving habits down around Riverstone are not, they are scary. People are cutting people off, they're speeding, and these are things that an automated traffic study doesn't show. And I would just like to go on the record that you folks really, get an understanding of what traffic study was done and possibly look into requiring, an extended one to really, as the lady just said, we've all moved here for the quality of life and, want to do whatever we can to help keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a hand raised there. You would like to say something? Come on up, and we'll get you signed up in a minute. Tell me your name. And
Deb Vernon.
do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Well,
I
thank
just wish to highlight some of the speakers we've had tonight. I live on Bellerive Lane in Riverstone, and there's a development going in behind me, to the west of me, and then to the northwest of me. Today, I walked across Beebe and Riverstone Drive, and it took me forever until traffic stopped to let me cross at a pedestrian crosswalk. It's becoming dangerous. Whenever I leave, and I leave going through Riverstone Drive, crossing Lakewood, it's not unusual for me to wait 3 cycles because the traffic's all backed up. So I know there's a need to development. It brings tax dollars to the city. But we also moved here because there's a quality of life. And if we start building like Seattle, we're going to lose that quality of life. So somewhere with prudent planning, you need to develop tax dollars coming in and quality of life. And as someone that moved here years ago from a big city, I'm seeing those signs develop here. And I think within 20 years, it's going to be so out of control that people will be leaving here for more small-town quality cities again. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And Sean, you can just get her to sign the sheet later. Again, that's it. Come on down. State your name, please.
James McKenzie.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Well, go right ahead. Thank you.
Well, I just came down. One, I wanted to thank the city for putting up the signs on the trail that we're talking about the meeting. That's how I learned about it. Also, I just wanted to point out, kind of highlight what some other people said, but currently the undeveloped site that I guess we now own, I use the rail bed, maybe it's the spur, whatever the one that follows the river. It's a great spot for recreation. It's a rare spot on the west side of town that has close access to the water, views the far side of the river without current development, kind of nature close to, but close to the city. And my big interest in showing up here tonight, my strong belief is to keep that open, as other people have mentioned, just so we have the access, we have the views. We can get down to the water as a public, non-private landowner there and preserve that access. I recognize the need and the desire to have development, to have all sorts of different kinds of development, and best of luck with that. I just hope that we kind of keep that pedestrian, perhaps bike throughway along the river, so we have more kind of non-motorized access across and around town. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on down. Come on, you can come up to the podium. Yes, come on up. Just state your name.
Mike Hansen.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
As a longtime resident, somebody that played on playland, walked along the beaches, I'm pro-change. This is fabulous what you're doing. What we did at the park, everything they've ever done in Coeur d'Alene looks fantastic for somebody that's been here a long time. The big thing I see is not just the traffic, and I totally agree that the traffic is really silly now. I mean, comparatively with the infrastructure of Coeur d'Alene the way it is and watching the traffic go around Coeur d'Alene the best you can. And down here, the simple thing is, if you build it, they'll all come here. They're all going to be here. And oddly enough, everybody has their own car. Mm-hmm. Parking. And right now I see parking, we have a place very close, well, right down there. And parking is a problem. Mm-hmm. I mean, I own a parking lot, and I have a space for me to park in it most of the time, and 40 other people do too, and I don't even know them. So parking is a big thing. I hope that somewhere along the line, this has really become quite an important thing. Because this beautiful thing that's being planned here, as we have down in Riverstone or East Sherman, the park, all of these things. We have a new parking lot in town now too. Anyway, that's looking good. But here, this is a big thing. Thousands and thousands of people, not to mention the residences. Maybe they won't have to park on the sidewalk. Maybe they can actually have a guest or two or a renter. Big thing, parking. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I got another hand. Come on down. Please state your name.
Bruce Bodker.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Right.
Go right ahead.
Okay, see, I've been listening and paying close attention to all that's been going on over the months because we live there on the trail. And it seems like there seems to be a general consensus that people want connectivity. We want a healthy lifestyle. We want to live in this beautiful community. We want to be able to commute by wheelchair, bicycles, walking, hiking. We don't need a road to take away our trail. We need a lifestyle that promotes healthful benefits where we walk and bike and move through our communities with ease without cars going 25 miles an hour down the front of the riverfront. I would encourage you to think very hard, keep an open mind, and make sure that everybody's needs can be, met so that we can still have this beautiful community. And I love Coeur d'Alene, and I know everybody here must, because it's a great spot. Let's not, cover it with roads. Let's promote healthful trails that get us to and from our communities. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. We got one. Come on. Just state your name.
My name is Al Sykes.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, and have to understand, I'm looking at the screen up here from the side, and it's not very visible.
Yes.
My concern, I'm for the project, the annexation. We in Riverstone think that's going to be a good thing in the long run, because like us, it's going to take time to develop. However, I think there's a part that's part of the annexation that includes a strip of land where the railroad passed.
The right of way.
Would they also be zoned at C-17?
Hillary can address that.
Yes, that's the problem. That is a narrow strip of land, and to allow development to go into there, not only will it take out close to 200 trees, they will just make a dense area and make Bellerive even worse.
No, I'm sure Hillary can address that.
So if you combine the two as part of the annexation, you're opening the door to that kind of development.
Go ahead, Hillary.
I'm not sure I understand the area you're talking about. So the existing railroad right-of-way?
From Beebe going to where the trail turns up.
Oh, yeah, that's separate from
It is
the
separate.
annexation request. It's
Okay.
already in the city.
Good, that's all I wanted to, thank you.
Thank you. Come on down. State your name, please.
Earl Cool.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
As a previous resident of King County, I really appreciate the thoroughness of your board and your process. It's very impressive. Most of the concerns that I've had have already been expressed, and I didn't understand the schedule, but on the common community property along the water, is there anything that ties up the schedule of that development relative to the rest of the schedule? I've seen some places where that's kind of ugly down there right now, and I hope that there is some schedule commitments that the public area and so on will be developed at the same time or even on the early part of it, because that would be rather important, I think.
I guess Hillary can address that when she comes back up and addresses a few other items that might have come up. Okay. Anyone else? All right. At this time, I'll have Hillary come up and address any of the issues that might have come up.
All right, I wrote down some of the items, and then if there's other ones that I might have missed, please refresh my memory on that. There were several items that came up on the traffic impacts, and I do want to point out, so we have Chris Bosley here, and we also have Melissa Cleveland from Welch-Comer, who is heading up the traffic impact study. So if there are specific questions that the commission might have or want some clarification on that, they are both available. But I did, the one gentleman is correct that the project does have other connections, not just off of Celtice Way. There is a connection that would take place here off of Suzanne that would connect into Riverstone, which connects to John Loop. There are 2 access points here on Celtice Way, and then there would be a connection to the west as well. And then the one that there's been some discussion about this evening is this one, if there was a future connection that would tie into Beebe, and that is not part of the annexation request. That's also kind of an optional consideration for council as part of the conceptual design. That one is going to be evaluated with that traffic study as well to see if an additional connection is required, and the exact location of that, if it is required and if council wanted to proceed with that, it would still be evaluated. So that's just kind of shown on here in a different color. As I mentioned before, that's not with any of the phasing. It is just kind of something that's being thrown out there for consideration. It's not been approved for that connection. The PUD, I think it is critical that we would establish probably something initially for the whole site, and then maybe it does make sense to have smaller areas to have kind of more refined PUDs. I think that could be very kind of a good way to handle it because it is a large site, and I think we are going to see, there's probably going to be some changing market conditions as the project develops over the years. So we don't want to make it so restrictive, but I think we do want to have at least some things in the initial PUD that lock in kind of what is the project, what should it look like, what are the top priorities, what's the vision of the project, where should the roadway network be, open space, connectivity, all of those things. And then also if there's certain uses that are not desired, you can kind of clarify that as well in a PUD. Talked about, we already talked about Centennial Trail relocation, and that's this whole thing that we said is really not on the table this evening. That's just something that's out there as consideration. I think that the point that Chet made was good in terms of those first 13 items for consideration, the annexation agreement, that those shouldn't apply to the navigable water. Those are just to the Atlas waterfront. I think that would be good to clarify. Let's see, what were the other things? And then parking has been discussed quite a bit. There is parking shown all along here that would serve this open space area. There's some areas planned for potentially parking around this nature park, some other, parking that could be shared in these other areas, but that has definitely come up quite a bit. We want to make sure the project does not get overparked, but that we don't have big parking impacts and having a lot of the people that come in want to take advantage of the open space be parked in the residential areas or impacting Riverstone or Mill River. So those are all things that will be considered, but that's really not, at this stage in the game. We're really just looking at the annexation and the zoning and items to recommend for the annexation agreement.
Question for you.
Yes.
How did that plan get developed? Give us a little background how you came up with areas, not areas, but 1, 2, 3, and 4. Are they designated single-family homes, condos? What was the thought process to develop that? Not the open space, because I think everybody gets, we do want to keep quite a bit of open space.
Right.
But understanding that, yes, we have to sell off some of that property to develop the open space. How did those areas come about? Or should we talk to the survey Welch-Comer or something like that? He's here.
Sure, I can provide some perspective on that.
Okay.
So as part of the Atlas Waterfront project, we started a year and a half ago almost on this effort. So when the city entered into this agreement to purchase the property, we started doing a lot of community input or community outreach to get input on the project. And so there was a community organization representative, so with the Coeur Vision Group. So we brought together representatives from numerous community organizations to get input on kind of what are their values and vision for the site. So that was kind of the first, big picture looking at the site. And then we've had multiple meetings since that time to get input on what should happen on the site. Then that information has been refined. So Welch Comer is working with Heartland Consultants and GGLO on the design and the financial feasibility. And they looked at not just this site, in and of itself, but also looking at the surrounding uses in the community to see what exists right now and what are kind of the demands for uses. So we know that townhouses are in high demand right now. We don't have a lot in Coeur d'Alene. We actually have very few. And so that's something where they said this could work really well. It creates kind of this urban feel. It's still single family, it's ownership properties. So that made a lot of sense. The single family detached, the thought was there could be a variety of different sizes of that, kind of some of the cottages, some different single family homes. The other ones here, that's kind of more the rectangular size, those they looked at could either be kind of the either apartments or condominium buildings, but only just a few stories tall, nothing too dense, just kind of allow for that option of housing. And then a single family up here as well. And then these ones really to kind of provide some flexibility for professional offices, maybe some retail, maybe some restaurants. Same with this here, because we want that third place. We want to have a place where people can boat up or be on the trail, walk, bike, come from the neighborhoods, come from Riverstone, Mill River, and surrounding developments to be able to take advantage of some of the, restaurants and be near the open space and the river. And then a lot of the open space and shoreline treatments as well came out of the public input.
Yeah. With regard to the C-17 zoning in all that area and the residential that you just mentioned, did you give any consideration to height restrictions and setbacks and things like that, only because of, with Riverstone being developed as it is down in Bellerive, setbacks, they're very close, you have short driveways and things like that. Is this just going to be a blanket PUD that the city council might approve and not have any type of direction on the things I just mentioned to you as far as height restrictions and setbacks and driveways and things like that? Given the fact that, yes, you have mixed use in there, which is great. It's going to take a long time to develop it. Things are going to change. And as we all sat up here many times and listened to the Riverstone project, not Riverstone, but Bellerive, be developed and changed, and PUDs changed. Me personally, and my fellow commissioners can comment on this later, I'm all for a PUD, but I've heard some stuff that was very interesting to say whether or not a blanket PUD is good or not good. So given the fact that setbacks and things like that are tied into a PUD, how did that get addressed into this particular PUD that you have here? And
so a PUD would come back to the commission, so it wouldn't just go straight to council. So it would have to come before the planning commission for approval. The heights right now, I think they were looking at 3 to 4 story maximum for these that would be kind of the condo or apartment loft style. But those are things that you could also include now in your items for consideration, the annexation agreement, or at least to be considered in terms of the height and the setbacks and driveways. But that's getting really into the specificity or really kind of bigger picture at this time. But
So if this goes forward with the recommendations of the commissioners, and that particular slide is in the package that the council sees, would that particular slide be approved in the annexation, or that's just more of a reference point, and then any PUD at some point in time has to come back to us?
right, this would more just be kind of, again, it's just a conceptual plan, so it wouldn't be locked into with the annexation agreement.
This reference is not being tied into the annexation itself?
No.
Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, we would, once we get to the point of talking about the specifics of a PUD, we would be looking at preliminary plat maps and those types of things at that point in time, and we have none of that, obviously.
Correct.
This is all just conceptual.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if you're concerned, if there's a concern about height,
Okay.
wouldn't it be appropriate maybe to put that in our recommendations?
Well, I've just put that out there to
Yeah,
see
I
what the commissioners want to talk about once I close public testimony. But I wanted to ask Hillary, and I'm sorry if I put her on the spot, but I wanted to get some clarification so we, the commissioners, understand exactly what we're doing here, and hopefully the public does as well. So that's why I kind of put it out there.
Thank you.
Okay, Hillary,
Okay.
thank you, appreciate it.
Welcome.
At this time, I'm going to close public testimony and bring it to the commissioners for discussion. Go ahead, John.
So, some discussion items, great comments. Thank you for your time, everybody. Don't disagree with anything that folks brought here. Traffic, trails, parking, docks, public access, heights, all of those good things. All valid comments. I get a little bit of a sense that we're maybe just a little bit ahead of the game, though. We want to guard against taking a look at this thing here, this concept thing. It says right in the report, this is included purely for information, and the design and mix of land uses are subject to change. And that's the downfall. When you put out a little graphic, you pick it to death. This is not a lock. This is not the end game. This is not the PUD yet. As Mr. Adams mentioned earlier, this is, all we're doing tonight is deciding what zoning to recommend. All of this other stuff will come later. I think everybody in this audience needs to buckle down and plan to come back 3 more times at least, because this is going to, have 1 PUD, 2 PUDs, maybe a combination of subdivisions and PUDs and stuff. We're going to see this and touch this many, many more times. So hang on, and a little bit further down the road is when we get a chance to deal with that. I heard nothing tonight. I've heard nothing tonight that says C-17 isn't the appropriate zoning. We heard this, we voted on this essentially once before, unanimously for C-17. The only wrinkle is that we're almost as a technicality, including the river, so we have proper, jurisdictional issues of the river. So, I think C-17 is the right decision tonight. Let's move it on. I like the conditions. They're not conditions. There's 15 recommendations. I like every one of them. I think maybe we fashion something that says, let's be cautious, or let's not go above a certain height. I think that is another one, but it carries the weight of a recommendation. And I like, is it Chet Grady? I like his recommendation, maybe tempered just a little bit with Mr. Adams' comment. Maybe, we can't require ownership in perpetuity any more than Tubbs Hill. But I think if the council sold Tubbs Hill tomorrow, well, I don't know, maybe they will. But maybe a recommendation that the planning commission might make a recommendation that the annexation agreement include a provision that the shoreline remain public ownership, something to that effect as a recommendation. That and heights. Other than that, I think the 15 elements there and C-17, along with a couple of other recommendations, knowing that we're going to see this a lot more times and in a lot greater detail.
Okay. Next.
No, I would just add the same things that made me excited about this a year ago still apply this evening, as far as accomplishing some of the goals of the comprehensive plan. I'm looking over the conditions from last year, as well as the additional 2 and the modification to, recommendation, not condition, recommendation number 11. And I think we still capture the intent and the spirit of the recommendations as far as protecting public access and use and shoreline connectivity. So in looking at number 5, number 7, number 11, and 12, I think we still are adhering to some of those principles. I guess one question was, we can't maybe be more explicit in terms of perpetuity ownership, and I think a lot of the intent in public access and ownership is captured in the recommendations. I also think connectivity of the Centennial Trail is captured in number 7, but do we need to be more explicit in making sure the Centennial Trail is not disrupted at that juncture? But I also recognize that's just a conceptual drawing, and that would be a later phase of discussion. So with what's before us tonight, I suggest we move ahead with the approval of the zone change, and think that this is still a great opportunity for the city.
I would agree. I think it's all been said. But one thing that I would recommend is that we do look at heights, and having lived near many bodies of water and respecting that view from the top to the bottom, so that the person who builds in front of the person who's already on board doesn't get his view blocked. And we have a natural site that drops down in altitude, so why not let the taller buildings be at the back of the site and let it cascade down the hill? I'm from Vancouver, Canada. Everybody gets access to the water. I'm fair game. So that's really important to me, is not blocking and not prohibiting all people, all owners and visitors, a view of that amazing water and the background to it. But I think we've covered everything that everyone has brought forward to us already in these points, and nobody said no C-17, and that's what we came here to hear tonight. So I think it's very well set forth.
Pete?
Well, I came to hear that, but I also came to hear their ideas. And I think this, I agree with C-17, but I agree that this opportunity for recommendations to the council is very important for us and for our community. We've heard quite a bit of testimony and so forth. I think we've captured it pretty well in these recommendations, with the exception of height, as you raised. I would like to have some discussion on that. I don't know where it would go, but height has been issues in the past in certain areas, and I know there's some, well, there's different views of that. My own view is I think we need to talk about that in some fashion, come up with some type of recommendation in this listing. Even if the recommendation is no recommendation on height, still make a stand on it. So with that.
Mike, got anything?
Yeah, at the risk of perhaps opening up a can of worms, we're going to have to probably hear again from the folks that are interested in developing the Merritt Brothers property, which is in that little triangulated area outside of our subject property. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, we had conversations about their height limitations, and we may have to revisit that, because again, if we allow a certain height to exist as it goes up the hill, there could be a potential blockage of their views behind what might come into play here in Riverstone. So we just need to be aware of the fact that there would be a domino effect.
Didn't we give them 45 feet? I think we did.
But I'm just saying that we're going to probably have to revisit that again, because they may come back
recall
to us
what
with a
his
different
height
request.
restriction was?
It was 45.
45?
It's 45.
I don't recall.
It was
It's
45.
45.
It was
So-
at the top.
I think it probably was 45,
And they're
because I
at the
think
top of the hill.
63 is what's allowed with the special
Yeah,
use
but
permit. I think you did
we didn't let
restrict
them
it.
go that high, yeah.
So, but all I'm saying is that I think we should be prepared to, perhaps have to have that revisited, just because if.
Well, I'm
we
sure
go-
everyone's going to challenge it.
Right.
But it sure makes the long-range, arguments less
I'm not
prevalent.
saying anything against what we're trying to accomplish. I'm just saying that that's ultimately what, we have to be aware of, because it could potentially come back toward us. And that's fine, because again, the annexation is really what's in front of us. Actually, approving C-17 prior to annexation is all that we're really dealing with.
But the recommendations, we're dealing with recommendations, and if we've set a height limit on a property back there, should we not take that into consideration now and put that in our recommendations?
I think
I
the
think we
PUD,
should.
I think the PUD is intended to govern that, right? So if we have the principles of blending in the natural landscape and topography, I feel like a talented architect could actually figure out how to deal with different height variation given the land, and I don't know that that's in our purview this evening. So I'd rather.
I totally agree with you, because 45 feet right in front of my face is way too tall. If it's on a nice slope, it could be 60 and I can see. It's more details. I agree that, Peter, that it's really important. I just don't know that we can put
Do it
numbers
tonight?
on a piece, on a rectangle.
Right, that's
We
what
can't
I'm
do it
saying.
tonight.
Can't do
Then
it
let's
tonight.
put a recommendation in there that maybe it not has number, but be mindful of, like you said,
There we go.
mindful of what's over here and mindful of here and have some provisions. And I understand PUD, they can design certain things, but I think a PUD wants to stay within certain areas that, of height that we basically believe in.
I think on Chet's recommendation on the shoreline, as well as heights, I think we just need a kind of good faith recommendation that records and memorializes the idea here, which is, one, public ownership of the shoreline. Devil's in the details later. Be very cautious going forward. We recommend that as the PUD and conceptual master plan for this area be developed, that an abundance of caution be given to building heights and vistas, something of that.
Well, we can add that.
I would concur that, point out, be aware of heights, setbacks, and things that affect what a PUD could be. We are making recommendations, and I encourage the people that are still here and the people that left, and the public that's listening, go to the city council meeting and express your viewpoint, because here, all we are doing is approving annexation. So the city council is the body that's going to say yes or no to what is or isn't put in from our recommendation. So right now I'm speaking to the microphone because there's not many people here anymore. But please go to your city council meeting when this is on the agenda. So if we have no more discussion, go ahead, Pete.
I would like to make a motion to approve this, but with contingent upon some phraseology in the recommendations that addresses the issue about height that both we and Mr. Ward had.
Well, if you want to make a motion, let's get to the page where that is.
No, I don't want to make the motion. I don't like to go through those.
Oh, you don't want to do the findings?
I ducked the findings. I ducked the findings. I'm prepared to support the findings.
Okay.
I'm well aware of this.
I'm happy.
So you want someone else to do it?
I
Namely, the person to your left.
I just do not want to do it myself.
Okay.
I'm happy to make a motion. I think I'm doing this. I think I'm doing this motion based on what I've heard up here, and I think we're all on the same page. So, with your blessing, I'll
go right ahead.
plow through this. So, with respect to A2 17M, matter that has come before the Planning Commission tonight, September 11th, 2018, and there being present a person requesting approval of item A2 -17M, a request for zoning prior to annexation of plus or minus 48 acres from county industrial to city C17, commercial at 17 units per acre, and a plus or minus 46 acres of Spokane River to navigable water zoning district. The applicant is the city of Coeur d'Alene. The property is that is located immediately south of Celtis Way and west of Centennial Trail and north of Spokane River. Subject site is commonly known as 3074 West Celtis Way and referred to as the Atlas Mill site, and a portion of the Spokane River as described in the legal description. Motion that we adopt findings B1 through B7 as stated in the worksheet, and that B8 finding be made that the proposal is in conformance with the comp plan policies as described, and it meeting 24 objectives that are listed in the worksheet, as well as the in addition to the 6 action items as Hillary pointed out in the 2030 plan, that it's well supported there. Motion for B9, finding that the utilities are available and adequate for the proposed use, and that's based on all of the staff comments in the staff report that streets and engineering have no objection with respect to streets. Water Department has no objections and make this finding that there is adequate capacity. Wastewater has stated that there's adequate capacity and they are willing to serve this project. That B10 be made that the physical properties of the site make it suitable for the request at this time. Stated in the staff report that the staff's analysis is that there is no topographical or other physical constraints that would make the subject property unsuitable for the annexation request. B11, we make a finding that the proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, or existing land uses, and that would be based on the statements from the city engineer that the proposed annexation would not likely adversely affect Celtis Way with regard to traffic, as it has the available capacity to accommodate additional traffic generated from the subject site. That C-17 is the appropriate zoning based on the fact that all the surrounding parcels are zoned C-17, and that would be the compatible zoning for the surrounding area. So with that, we would conclude and make a decision that the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that the request of the City of Coeur d'Alene for zoning prior to annexation as described in the application should be approved, and that we would forward our recommendation to the City Council for the annexation agreement to include the 15 recommendations that were furnished in the worksheet, plus 2 additional recommendations, the first one being verbiage to the effect that the Planning Commission recommends that the annexation agreement include a provision that the shoreline remain in public ownership, and a 17th item that says that the conceptual master plan and all subsequent PUDs be developed cautiously addressing building heights to ensure a preservation of views and vistas.
I have a first by Commissioner Ingalls.
I'll
Pete?
second it.
Okay, I was going to give Pete a chance to second it.
No, I
Oh.
gave up all my rights earlier.
Okay.
I strongly support our commissioners.
Okay, I have a second. Can I have roll call, please, Shannon?
Fleming? Fleming?
Yes.
Ingalls?
Yes.
Lutrip?
Yes.
Mandel?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Okay. Item A-2-17M passes. Okay.
Someday you'll have to.
Next item is a proposed R34 density increase special use permit in an R17 zoning district, SP-9-18, and take it away.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is a public hearing for item SP 8-18, application by Ron Ayers, represented by Architects Miller Stauffer Architects, requesting a special use permit to allow density increase to R34 that will allow a maximum of 22 units in the R17 zoning district. Property is located at 1750 North Pine Court, and legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on August 25th, 2018, and all of the required notifications have been made. As you can see, the property is located here highlighted in red. This is Northwest Boulevard. This is US 95. This is Ironwood. This is Emma Avenue. Here's a close-up aerial photograph of the property. The property is highlighted here in red. The applicant currently owns all of the property here to Northwest Boulevard, but the special use requested area is just over this area right here. Here's a bird's eye view of the property. As you can see to the north are some multifamily units, and there's a private road that the applicant owns. There's also an easement and utility access easement and utility easement that goes across the property for the benefit of this property. Here's a bird's eye view to the south. And here's a site plan of the proposed project. There's proposed 2 apartment complexes. One is located on this side and one is located on this side. It's hard to visualize through this site plan, but there's the access easement that goes through the property. Here's some elevations of the property. This is looking from Emma Avenue, and this one's looking from Davidson Avenue. It's 2 apartment complexes. One is a 3-story and one is a 4-story. There are 3 findings that must be met in order for a special use permit to be approved. The first finding is B8A, that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. Subject property is located here, highlighted in white, but it's located in the transition area, and transition areas are areas where neighborhoods are supposed to transition over time and uses are supposed to change greatly through the planning period. Here's 3 comprehensive plan objectives as it relates to the special use request. The full list is on page 11 of your staff report. First one here on the slide is community design, support the enhancement of existing urbanized areas and discourage sprawl. Objective 1.14, efficiency, promote the efficient use of existing infrastructure, thereby reducing impacts to undeveloped areas. Objective 3.0, manage growth, provide for a diversity of suitable housing forms within the existing neighborhoods to match the needs of a changing population. The next finding is finding B8B, that the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. The next slides will be site photos of the subject property. This is on Emma Avenue looking south through Pinewood Court. This is looking southwest through the property, and this is looking south. This one's on the south end looking west, and this is on the south end looking north. Here's the zoning map showing the existing zoning and the surrounding zoning. Existing zoning is R17 to the east. To the west is C17. To the north, we got R17 and R12. And we got R12 to the east and R12 to the south. The current zoning allows the applicant to build an 11-unit complex on this property. The proposed will allow 22 units. Here's special use permits over time, and we have 4 density increases that were approved, one in 83, one in 86, one in 91, and another one in 89 that wasn't built. The red one in 2012 was for an auto camp that was denied, and in 2010 there was an auto camp that was withdrawn. And to the south there's a mini warehouse facility. Land use map. To the north we got multifamily, to the east single family, to the west is commercial, and to the south single family. The last finding is finding B8C, that the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. This application has been routed through the city departments, and each department has indicated there is adequate public facilities and utilities and able to serve the proposed request. There are 4 proposed recommended conditions. The first 2 are from water. Any additional main extensions and/or fire hydrants and services will be the responsibility of the developer at their expense. Any additional service will have cap fees due at the building permitting time, and wastewater that the special use is subject to the access and utility easement as recorded with Kootenai County on 12/22/2005 under instrument number 2003459. And finally, that the proposed development of the subject site will need to meet the parking requirements for multifamily. Planning Commission will need to consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to stand for any questions that you may have.
Questions, Mike? Nope. Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Is the applicant here that wishes to speak? And just state your name and I'll swear you in.
Mike Walker with Miller Stauffer Architects.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
So on behalf of the property owner, Ron Ayers, we were charged to apply for an R34 special use permit for the property. Some of this will kind of reiterate what staff already gone through, but kind of an aerial map of the area, kind of a little bit broader out. Here's Winton School here, Northwest Boulevard, Riverstone, 95, the hospital right there. Here's kind of the roads to kind of give you a better idea of the network, and there's our site. Looking at zoning, we have a large C17 district here. We have R17, a lot of multifamily here. C17L with the medical district, and then an established R12 neighborhood to the east and south. Kind of an aerial view of a site. Again, here's Winton School, the river, Riverstone. This is the VA hospital right here, and then 95. Some character photos. Some of these are repetitive of what staff have already shown. Some of the views from the site, much of the existing site is vacant. There are 3 mobile homes to the east and then single families to the south. There is one C17L structure currently right there. And then to the north, a lot of apartment complexes. Again, looking kind of tighter in, here's Northwest Boulevard, Emma, Davidson. Looking at some of the existing land uses, the apartment complexes that are on this side, the commercial uses that are on this end, and then some of the single family that are down here. There is our site. The applicant, like mentioned by staff, does own all of this and is intentionally limiting the R34 to a 100-foot swath of their existing property, which in turn would limit the number of units. Here's looking again tighter in with some of the zoning there's in the area. Some of this is, I won't go too much into this, but because staff kind of already hit it. But we think this R34 is a good use of the site because of the existing infrastructure there. It's an infill project, so it's going to use a lot of the existing infrastructure, fire, water, sewer. Obviously, from an economic standpoint, this is a good area. It's kind of a nexus of 3 major commercial districts. There's the Riverstone district, the medical corridor around the hospital, and then not far from the education corridor in downtown. Again, going over some of the special use, so I won't go too much over that. Overlaid with zoning, and then an aerial photo. The other thing that's unique about this property is it's on the edge of a transitional area, and so we feel that it's a good candidate for an R34 because it's on the edge of not only commercial to the west, but multifamily to the north. So we feel like this transition to the R12 to the south is appropriate, as well as its proximity to the arterial Northwest Boulevard. One thing of note, the applicant is planning on putting a hotel on this site, a restaurant hopefully on this site, and then there's an existing coffee stand right there. Kind of touched on this again, the infill project, existing streets, it just makes a lot of sense for this site. Going with the actual proposed design that we would like to see go forward is a mix of different unit sizes, 1-bedroom studios, 2 bedrooms, some 3-bedroom units. Again, trying to give some diversity in apartments for that area, and then kind of an elevated structure to provide the access to the adjacent property owner to the east. as well as provide the necessary parking for a structure of this nature. Some proposed elevations, a little bit more in detail, but materials, we see wood, brick, kind of a mix of different materials, but that isn't necessarily finalized at this point. But with the taller structure on this side of the site and the shorter structure on that side. Providing gaps in the middle and around the edge. We've intentionally set back the structures from the street to help, again, maintain some vistas for the surrounding neighborhood, as well as creating a gap in the center. Just another look at the site from the back of the property, from the other side from the back. Again, these are kind of the keys that we see why it's a good idea. Transitional buffer between C-17 and R-12, provide needed housing opportunity near the downtown core, education corridor, medical complex, and the Riverstone Commercial District. Provide increased residential density by repurposing existing improvements, infrastructure without additional burden, decrease sprawl, basically. And then enhance the tax base by, if approved, by a factor of 2. And I guess I'll stand for any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
Access to a street, it seems to come off on the easterly side of the site. And what does that dump onto? Because there's no road there. It's not really a good aerial view. It looks like 2 cul-de-sacs reaching to a north road.
So there's Emma Avenue that connects to 95 and Northwest Boulevard, and then there's Davidson that connects to Northwest Boulevard and 95 as well.
But your site plan comes off to Emma, but then you show another access easement. Is that with that?
The access easement is to this property right here.
Okay, but that's
so
a
it comes
property.
down through this property and into that one.
And there's a driveway, there's a roadway there, or?
Right now, there's a current private road and an access easement. We propose maintaining that. Hence why we're elevating that structure on that side of the site.
Okay, so you're not exiting out on Davidson at all, only coming in on Emma. So
We don't necessarily want to preclude that because that other structure to the south potentially could have an underground structure. We got to look at the feasibility of that, which would access off Davidson. But what we don't propose is a through access through the complete site.
Okay.
Mike?
Yeah, if memory serves me correct, was that Scoop Street? Is that the name of that street between Emma and Davidson?
This one right
That's
here.
been abandoned, is that correct?
Chris, that was vacated.
Or vacated,
Yeah.
meaning that whole property would be built upon ultimately by the hotel and placement of properties with setbacks and all that. That was all proposed last year or whenever it was.
The hotel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so I wanted to make sure that that street, even though we see it today, it really won't be there.
Correct.
Right, okay.
No more? Okay.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you. I've got Ron Ayers, he's in favor but did not want to speak. I have Justin Trow, he's in favor, did not want to speak. I have William Berger, did not indicate anything. I have Melissa Cleveland, did not indicate anything. Norm Curtis did not indicate anything. And that's it on my list. You can rebuttal if you want to rebuttal yourself. No? Okay, thank you. At that time, I'm going to close public hearing and give it to the commissioners to have a discussion. No discussion, then I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
This matter having come before the Planning Commissioner on September 11th, 2018, and there being present a person requesting approval of item SP-9-18 and R34 density increase special use permit in the R17 zoning district. The applicant is Ron Ayers. Location is a 0.47 acre parcel located at 1750 North Pinewood Court. Our findings are based on the items of B1 through 7 boilerplate. B8, pursuant to section 17.09.220 special use permit criteria, a special use permit may be approved only if the proposal conforms to all of the following criteria to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. The proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan, and specifically point out that community design, it adds a great number of residential keys in a heavily dense area. The efficiency, we've got a lot of infrastructure around and access to the hospital and major thoroughfares. Also very, a live-work area is very desirable in this zone. B8B, the design and planning of the site is compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. This is based on, again, our density fitting into this area where we have a great deal of demand for accommodation and staff for the hospital, for the hotels that'll soon be online, and walkability. It's also compatible with the existing land use patterns. We have the C-17s adjacent, and certainly to the north we have a great many of highly dense apartment buildings as well. 8B, 8C, location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. We've already covered that. We see no issues with water, fire safety, sewer, that has all been addressed. And so finally, in conclusion, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that Ron Ayers, for a R34 density increase special use permit, as described in the application, should be approved with the special conditions as follows. With water, any additional main extensions or fire hydrants and services will be the responsibility of the developer at their expense. 2, any additional service will have cap fees due to at building permitting. Wastewater, this special use permit is subject to the access and utility easement for Kootenai County. And from planning, the proposed development of the subject site will need to meet the parking requirement for multifamily residential uses per 17.44.030 of the zoning code. Motion.
I have a motion by Fleming. I have a second, please.
I'll second.
I have a second by Ward. Roll call. Shannon?
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Messina. Or not Messina.
I'd like to vote, but I can't.
He can't.
I know. Lutrip,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
and Mandel.
Okay.
Yes.
Motion, I'm sorry, item SP-9-18 passes. Congratulations. Next item is legislative. It's A-3-18. The applicant is the Coeur d'Alene School District. Proposed 7.18 acre annexation from county agricultural to C, to an R8 zoning district in the city limits. Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you. Give me just a second to get this up. I had it open already.
Shrinking
I
fast.
have everything open but that one, so. Okay, so we have heard about an annexation tonight, we've heard about a special use permit tonight, and now we're gonna do an annexation and a special use permit tonight. Together, so it's a two-part. Okay, so the owner is the Coeur d'Alene School District. The request is for annexation. It's zoning prior to annexation, much like the other one, from county agricultural to a request of R8 residential. The applicant is Megan O'Dowd. She is of Lyons and Dowd Attorneys. And it's commonly known as 1914, 1950, and 2008 West Prairie Avenue. So the request tonight is expansion of the school district. As our city grows, families grow, and so they have children, and they need a place to go to school. So the school district has acquired this property, and they would like to include it into city limits to build upon it. Here's the vicinity map. Prairie Avenue here east-west on the north side of the property, and then Ramsey Road running north-south on the east side of the property. Here is the annexation map. Looks much better than up there than it does in front of me here. It is 3 lots. So they are proposing R8. They discussed this with staff. The reasoning behind that is much of the property in that area north of town is zoned R8, and they were able to request a special use permit in tandem with this for community education, rather than requesting a much higher use district that wouldn't comport with the surrounding neighbors. Here is what it is currently zoned in the county. It is zoned agricultural. And there are 3 findings that need to be made for an annexation, actually 4, I believe. So finding B88 is that this proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. In the 2007 comprehensive plan, it is known as Ramsey Woodland. It is contiguous to city limits right now. Here is the map of Ramsey Woodland. This is the subject property on the north-hand side of this map, just south of Prairie. And transition areas are areas where the character of neighborhoods is in transition and should be developed with care. The street network, number of building lots, and general land use are expected to change greatly within the planning period. Here is the definition of Ramsey Woodland today. I won't read this into the record. It is in your staff reports, as well as the Ramsey Woodland tomorrow. Nothing speaks directly to a school, but it does talk about expanding neighborhoods, which a school would help support. Here are the characteristics of Ramsey Woodland neighborhoods and the densities, as well as parks and pedestrian and bicycle trails being close by. As mentioned earlier by my cohorts here, is the plan goals and objectives are listed out here. This is the laundry list, and rather than defining a couple of them, I provided the laundry list, but the definitions of each can be found in your packet. Finding B9 is that the public facilities and utilities are or are not available and adequate for the proposed use. Parks is going to require a 12-foot trail on the north-hand side. That will happen at the time of development. Street trees will be required at the time of development. This is the feedback that I got from Parks. For annexation, it's a little premature for that. This would happen at the time of development when a building permit was pulled. Stormwater will be addressed at the time that the site develops. Streets, and the subject site is currently undeveloped. So it doesn't necessarily show this in the site plan, which comes following in the special use permit, but access would be gained from Vista Meadows, if you guys remember that one right next door. It came in as an annexation as R8 with a PUD. The PUD did expire. They came back and requested duplex lots, and so that street would extend it would extend north into Hayden. It changes name from Vantage to Moselle, and would follow it south and then turn into the subject property closer to the south end. We'll discuss that a little bit more at the special use permit time, but the street is not constructed yet that would access the site. So water. Hayden Lake Irrigation District services the water and provides water up in this area. The city does not. I want to also note that my staff report left out one word, which is a conditional will serve rather than a will serve. I just wanted to point that out. The school district is currently in discussions with Hayden Lake Irrigation District. They have to get a formal approval from Hayden Lake Irrigation District and get that will serve letter before they will provide water. I did have a pretty good discussion with Brandon Rose. He says that they do have the capacity, but he can't write that letter until they get in front of the board and get that approval. So we do have a conditional will serve letter at this point. Okay, so wastewater. The city does service property in the northern northern portion of the city here with wastewater. However, it does not currently exist to the site. They are working with Vista Meadows as well as Coeur d'Alene Place to extend that sewer line up to the property. So there's some comments here about Coeur d'Alene Place 30 addition sewer main extension through Vista Meadows as provided by Mike Becker. Fire, this is a pretty boilerplate language for them. They will take a look at the site when it actually develops and ensure that the road widths, surfacing, maximum grade, fire hydrants, etc., are appropriate for the site. That's the one I just talked about. Wow, I must have copied it twice there. All right, finding B10, that the physical characteristics of the site make or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. So the physical characteristics of the site, it is relatively flat. Actually, it's really flat out there. There's nothing that would prevent the site from being developed subject to getting the utilities to the site. Here's a picture of that site. This is Vista Meadows that we were just discussing. This is Vantage that would drop down and service the property. The city of Hayden is to the north with single-family residences. There is a single-family dwelling unit directly east, and there is a large home on a large lot to the south that is currently in the county. Here's some pictures of the site. This is looking prairie along the north-hand side, sidewalk that would end up being replaced with a 12-foot wide extension through their trail, and then homes that would be removed when the site develops. This is that large home to the south of the property that is currently in Kootenai County. And then this is Vantage Drive that I was just speaking about that would end up hooking up and turning into Moselle to service the property in the future. Finding B11 is that the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and or existing land uses. So the neighborhood is rapidly changing. We've seen that over the last few years with numerous requests for annexation, largely of the PUD or R8 variety. And you can refer to photos and descriptions of the physical characteristics which were found in finding B10 of your packet. So this was, according to Chris Bosley, our city engineer, regarding traffic, is that the proposed annexation would not likely adversely affect the future Moselle Drive with regard to traffic, as it will have the available capacity to accommodate the traffic generated from the subject site. There is a traffic study underway to fully understand the possible impacts from Prairie Avenue. Ultimately, that is up to Lakes Highway District to determine the impacts to Prairie, as that is outside of the city limits. So here is a generalized land use map. This is the subject property. Vista Meadows is currently vacant. We do have a single-family house here, a single-family house here, as well as single-family homes here. This area down here is agriculture, and then a bunch of single families directly west. The existing zoning of the site, we have R8 PUD to the south, that is Coeur d'Alene Place. We have Vista Meadows, which is R8 and abuts the property, R8 over here as well. We do have some C17 and R3 that are nearby. So as working through this, and I discuss this in my staff report, is there is a number of different entities that will have to come together to bring this project to fruition. So we have Hayden Lake Irrigation District, Vista Meadows, as well as Lakes Highway District, all working together to accomplish getting a school on this property. The city of Coeur d'Alene doesn't have a dog in a couple of these fights, so it's going to be up to the school district and those entities to come to an agreement to get some of these things in place. I just wanted to point that out and get that on the record. So they are requesting annexation of 7.18 acres with an R8 zoning designation, and it was filed in conjunction with a special use permit that we'll be discussing shortly. And with that, Planning Commission must consider this request and to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And as mentioned earlier, you would be making this recommendation to council. So that concludes my staff report. If you have any questions, staff is here to answer them.
John?
Thanks, Sean. As you mentioned, there's a number of entities involved, and the applicant's going to have to sort a few things out with, Lakes Highway and Hayden Lake Water and that sort of thing. But the question is more on the sewer, and it gets a little complicated in the staff discussion. We have a finding to make we have to make kind of a black or white finding that says public facilities and utilities are or are not available and adequate. So the staff report says with respect to wastewater that sewer, quote, is not readily available to this annexation. So, are we essentially unable to make that finding, or do you take and interpret it such that, the verbiage is, can sewer service be provided or extended to serve the property? Yeah, I mean, sewer could be extended anywhere. I mean, it's not there right now. So how can we make the finding that it's available when it's not available?
Right, and that is a question that we'll all have to wrestle tonight. The applicant is here. It's something they've been working on daily. I'm guessing they have additional information that has come forward since this was written and printed. Hopefully they have some more assurance and something in place. I know that staff had discussed with Coeur d'Alene Place as well as Vista Meadows is putting the land into an easement, or that portion of property into an easement, so that there is no inhibitor for that line to be extended. However, that line has not been extended, as you had mentioned.
Thanks.
Could it be something conditioned upon? Instead of finding, it's a condition upon sewer being available?
Well, this is an annexation. You can do that with a special use permit. With the annexation, you just make recommendations to council. So there is another piece to this that will come later, but we don't generally condition annexations. That comes through an annexation agreement, which legal works.
Because we have another
Yes, there's two
item
parts.
right after this, which would address that condition if you wanted to do something like that.
What I thought I heard John say is that we have to say that sewer is or is not available.
I agree with what John said yesterday, yeah. Go ahead, Brianna.
Does the suggested language under staff recommendation that the annexation agreement include, should we be more specific that with those entities and with the city, we can meet those criteria? Right now, it says provide assurance that needed services and access are in place. Is that?
Well, that's largely, I wrote that to buy time because this will go forward to council.
Right.
And we're all hoping that all of those things fall into place as this moves forward. It is, in school is a term, much like we talk about the Swiss cheese or whatever, is leapfrog development. When you get out in front of your utilities and what does it take before those utilities make it to the site. Generally with private development, it can be difficult because you get someone that gets in front of someone else and they play the game of, well, you're going to pay for my utilities. And I've had these discussions with the school district as well. It is a public entity, so it is a little bit different. The city is not on the hook to provide those utilities. So the taxpayer through this mode will not pay for that. Now through the school district, if they have to pass a bond or something like that to get those utilities there, that's going to be up to them. But I don't want to put words in their mouth. They are here to answer some of these questions.
So really in the special use permit is where we would address those as conditions that those services
That's where
be
you
met.
can apply those conditions if you see fit.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
And who is representing the school district?
Let me get there. You're welcome.
I just need your name, and I'll swear you in.
Good evening, Commissioners. Megan O'Dowd on behalf of Lyons O'Dowd, the attorneys of record for the applicant.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I certainly do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I've tried to keep this at a big level view. We have our application should be in your packets already. Staff report, I thought, did a great job already addressing a lot of the specifics here. So I don't know. Do we want to make it like... Thank you. So as Sean already mentioned, the request here is for the Coeur d'Alene School District to be annexed in to the city limits and to obtain an R8 zone for purposes of constructing a new elementary school. And we can go into that with our special use application. This is the aerial of the site. We had to actually purchase 3 parcels totaling about 7.18 acres. We are currently in Kootenai County with agricultural designation zoning right now. So we are in a transition area. We're in the Ramsey Woodland neighborhood. So we have Sunshine Meadows is an existing subdivision here. We have the future extension of Coeur d'Alene Place to the southwest. As staff already mentioned here, we've got some single family homes here, and then this will be Vista Meadows. There will be duplex developments here on the northern part of that development, and then single family homes to the south, and it is all an R8 development. Certainly a new elementary school would benefit both the existing and the future development of these areas and help stabilize these transition areas. And we also, I think, will support the special area designations with the open space that an elementary school will always provide. Certainly we'll have playgrounds, parks, well, playground equipment, and open space as well. So our narrative addresses the specific goals that we believe we're meeting with our request for annexation, but the big picture view again is the increased open space, strengthening the communities, promoting connectivity. We have in our application materials a number of jobs. We think we'll be bringing close to 2 million in new job opportunities with the new elementary school there. Again, supporting new existing neighborhoods, infrastructure, and open space for students. I think goal 3.12 should be called out specifically because a specific goal is creating new schools, and here we are asking for that help right now. And again, I think a big thing to point out here is we went to the voters a few years ago and obtained a bond approval and had huge 77% approval, which is quite rare. It was unprecedented, frankly. So our goal is to find a new site in the northwest area of the district to help alleviate all of our crowding issues. So by annexing us in and approving the site use permit application, you'll be helping us achieve what the voters have already told us that they want us to do. So sewer, Vista Meadows, I wish we had John Butler and Merle here tonight, who are the representatives of Vista Meadows. We are in regular conversations with Vista Meadows. We had tentatively reached a shared sewer agreement, but because of the sizing of the pipe, which may be coming up more in the special use planning stage than here in the annexation, that final agreement hasn't been reached, but we're in a cost-sharing arrangement with Vista Meadows and are reviewing their proposed plans for bringing sewer to the site. I mean, it's typical that they would always have to bring sewer to and through their site, and we will be linking on through their extension, and the name of that Cedar View is the name of that street there. Water, Hayden Lake Irrigation District, we are applying for official board approval now and hope to see that at the next board meeting. We'll meet whatever the requirements are for the city fire department. Prairie, as Sean said, is in the Lakes Highway District. We have already attended we were on an official agenda once, and we've attended a second one. We have a traffic study underway that will be revisited by the Highway District here at their next meeting. Those discussions are ongoing, and certainly we will reach the final decision and what mitigation may be necessary, and likely in conjunction again with the development that's going to the west through Vista Meadows. And internal access is through City of Coeur d'Alene jurisdiction, and I didn't see any concerns in the staff report with those access points. So again, existing neighborhoods, a new elementary school would help strengthen these communities and really put a stronghold in for the new expansion of Coeur d'Alene Place and Vista Meadows that are going in. When you look at the city map too, I think the annexation seems just as a natural border along Prairie. I don't know if that's a long-term goal, but right now we have kind of a piecemeal where it's coming up to Prairie. This would be helping to make a more consistent, solid line of annexation along Prairie Avenue. We are near several established and new residential neighborhoods. And again, we did have several conversations with staff about what zoning we thought would be most appropriate. We were originally hoping to just go for R34 because that's a permitted outright use for a school, and that's our only purpose for the site. But staff did express concern that they really would like to keep it consistent with what's around in the neighborhood, and so we're doing our best to accommodate those, and that's why we've gone for R8 and simultaneously applied for the special use permit. And I stand for questions.
Go ahead, John.
So, again, on this, the sewer issue, school's great there. I think it, it's needed and all that. I don't mean to be putting a stick in the spokes or something like that, but we do have a finding that it's pretty clear. Are utilities available and adequate? Yes, no. It's kind of pretty simple. And you're saying in the staff report it says they're not currently available, and I thought I heard you say that there's a tentative agreement, and a tentative agreement doesn't say that utilities are available. And I don't want to slow this down, but I'm wondering, you all sat through that earlier, very lengthy presentation.
Yeah.
Similar, where we have an annexation agreement going forward with some recommendations for the annexation agreement. Would you be comfortable if we recommended, just like we had all those recommendations for that other annexation, would you be comfortable in if we made a recommendation item that said something to the effect that that the Planning and Zoning Commission makes a recommendation for the annexation agreement that the applicant demonstrate final agreement with Vista Meadows on sewer extension prior to recordation of the annexation?
I wouldn't have any heartburn requiring the district to demonstrate an agreement that we will bring it there through Vista Meadows. I don't have any heartburn with adding that kind of condition.
Not commission, it would be a recommendation.
Right. We've gone through the, sorry, magic word, recommendation.
Recommendation for
Yeah,
an annexation agreement. That way.
Absolutely.
What the city council could do is pull a plug on this if in the 11th hour sewer isn't available. You follow me?
No, absolutely, and I don't think we would have any problem with that. I'd also, maybe I'll defer to staff on this too. I mean, that the roads, Vista Meadows isn't developed yet. I mean, there's no road there. I just talked to Merle, who's the engineer, this morning, and they just submitted an updated plan because we'd gone back and forth on what size of pipe might be needed there. It is an 8-inch is all that's being required for what that's worth, and that'll probably come up in special, the SUP application. But they were recently annexed in and didn't have any of that infrastructure there, so I would just recommend that we do something similar. Do you know what the requirement was? I mean, they'll have to bring it to and through, and then we would be able to always have the right to tap into it. Really, all that we've been talking about with Vista Meadows is the arrangement on the size to ensure that we have a sized pipe that we could use to facilitate it. Luckily, we all need 8-inch, so there's no issue there. And then we're working out a price sharing agreement, essentially. Does that make sense? So, Sean, how did they get theirs approved for annexation? Because I'm assuming, were they required to have the agreement in place at time of annexation?
To clarify, they had two different scenarios. They were able to either use a pump house and pump out through Alps or go through Coeur d'Alene Place. So they had two options available to them, and we were going to make them bond for whichever one that they were going to do at the time that they recorded the plat. So in this case, I don't think there's going to be a plat or subdivision coming forward, so there is no availability for the city to apply conditions or get bonding or anything like that. So it's a little more difficult in this case because there's no request to subdivide.
Well, so I mean, I would then, with that information, absolutely say that with a recommendation that we can bring forward an agreement that Vista Meadows is going to allow us to attach through their system. I think that that would be totally appropriate and is the plan already, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a quick question too, real quick. Sean, help me remember too then. How did Vista Meadows get the agreement in place with Hayden Lake Irrigation District? Because they also they had to do the same thing, correct?
Yes, they did. They did get instead of conditional, they got a will serve letter.
They got a will serve.
Correct.
But we are looking at a conditional will serve, not a formal will serve.
Yeah, it was an oversight by planning staff as well as the school district and the timing of that. I called at the 11th hour and said, I know I've seen it. Where's your will serve letter? And they went and looked for it. They're like, I know I've seen it. And it couldn't be found because it wasn't there. So I called Mr. Rose and requested the conditional will serve. And he gave the assurance that there is the capacity to serve the site, but there is no serve letter in place saying that they will serve the site.
Until the board approval.
Until the board approves that.
Right, and then again, also then to the school district, the last paragraph of the letter from the Hayden Lake Irrigation District, it actually mentions that it will be the developer's responsibility to install necessary water infrastructure in accordance with current district standards. And I'm certainly assuming, but I want to ask, is the district on board with that?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had many discussions over the last 6 months or so with all of the various agencies, and there is going to be movement of existing lines to the northern part of the property. I think that's why we all assumed that the will serve letter was there, because we've had so many of these discussions that I think we all omitted that fact. But the application was formally made and submitted today, so we'll be before the Hayden Lake Irrigation District at their next meeting. And a similar recommendation to have that final letter, I think, would be appropriate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John Mueller is in favor. Did wish to speak?
I do not. I'll wait for the next.
Okay. Jeff Voller is in favor, does not wish to speak. And I have a Sandy here with nothing on it, no last name, so I don't think that person's here. Must have signed up on something different.
They might have been here for the Atlas Mill site and signed the wrong paper.
That's it. Megan, do you wish to add anything else? You're good? All right. I'm going to close public testimony and bring it to the commissioners to discussion and hopefully make a motion. Go ahead, John.
A discussion item, and I guess a question for staff. You know, I'm in favor of this project for sure. It fixes the, what do you call it, donut hole or Swiss cheese, I call it, or what cleans up the city boundary. We certainly need the schools and all that, but in terms of integrity, I guess, of process, we have to make that finding, you know, and I think, you know, that there maybe time is of the essence here, and they want to get this annexation locked up so they can close the land deal and move on and do all the things that they've got to do. We've got to make a finding that says that the sewer's available when we know it really isn't, but if it's obtainable at the time that the annexation records, can we kind of hedge ourselves that way so we kind of are still of integrity?
I think the intent is to make sure that it is ultimately available and is not blocked off for any other reason. It doesn't necessarily mean, I don't think, that it has to be available today. It just has to be theoretically available as opposed to being landlocked or something of that nature. And so I think you're perfectly within your integrity to find that it is available based on Mr. Becker's comments that there are several paths to provide wastewater.
Would it still be wise and prudent to put a condition maybe on the special use side or something that says something to the effect that they demonstrate this agreement with Vista Meadows at some point in time? Or
You certainly can, but they would not be able to build if they don't have sewer.
so it takes care of itself.
I think so, yes.
I have another quick question. What is the status of Vista Meadows? I mean, where are they at with their development?
They're in final design for their subdivision right now for those improvements.
Okay, so those improvements they're inevitable. They will be coming forth.
I wouldn't go so far as to say inevitable, but they are well along their way, final design, and it just comes down to dollars and cents and getting the dirt moving and the improvements in place.
Okay. Impending.
So I guess to close the thought on that other deal, I'd recommend we just take that off the table. You know,
The recommendation?
Hearing from Mr. Adams that really there's integrity of process. We can make the finding by the virtue that can the sewer service be extended? And yes, as Becker points out, there are a couple of different ways. It's not right there today, but
and if it's not there, it won't be developed.
It will take care of itself, you know. So I think to unclutter things, we take that off the table.
Okay, all I need is a motion. I love the silence. Thank you.
Happily, actually, I'm happy to see this move forward. So I think we agreed to take the sewer language off the table, but include the recommendation from staff as stated. Okay, so this matter having come before the Planning Commission on September 11th, 2018, and there being present a person requesting approval of item A-3-18, a request for zoning prior to annexation from county agricultural to city R8. The applicant is Coeur d'Alene School District 271. The location is 3 parcels west of Ramsey Road, located south of Prairie Avenue, commonly known as 1914, 1950, and 2008 West Prairie Avenue. For findings, we adopt items B1 through 7 as boilerplate standard. For B8, we find that this proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan policies, specifically around managed growth, neighborhoods. I believe there are some goals around education in the comprehensive plan that are not specified here, but are relevant. For finding B9, that public facilities and utilities are available and adequate for the proposed use. This is based on staff comments and pending agreements with Hayden Lake Irrigation District. For B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do make it suitable for the request at this time. The proposed parcels are flat and appropriate for building an elementary school. And for B11, that the proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and/or existing land uses. Criteria for B11 are related to traffic congestion. I think we're pending some additional information from the traffic study. But the proposed zoning is compatible with the surrounding area in terms of density and types of use, which is R8 primarily, and a special permit for community education will be addressed in a separate, separate process, right? And so we would consider adding recommendation that the annexation agreement include language to confirm the entities described with the staff report, including Lakes Highway District, Hayden Lake Irrigation, and the developer Vista Meadows to provide assurances that the services and access are in place to ensure a high-quality and safe asset for the school district and the citizens of Coeur d'Alene. The Planning Commission then, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that the request of Coeur d'Alene School District 271 for zoning prior to annexation, as described in the application, should be approved, and suggested provisions are included, as stated before, with the recommendation for the annexation agreement.
Okay. I have a motion by Mandel, looking for a second.
Second.
I have a second by Ingalls. Roll call, please.
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Lutrip.
Yes.
Mandel.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Okay, item A-3-18 passes. The next one is a proposed community education special use permit, SP-10-18. Welcome back, Sean.
Yes. A lot of this will look very, very familiar. Much of it is of the same language, so many of the questions are worded slightly different, but really get at the same thing. That's not it either. That is already, I swear it was just open a minute ago. Okay. Okay, so once again, Coeur d'Alene School District is requesting a special use permit, SP 1018, although it says S10, it's not a subdivision, it's a special use permit. They are requesting community education in a proposed R8 zone in tandem with the request that we had just heard. The consultant is Megan O'Dowd of Lyons O'Dowd. So they are requesting approval of a community education special use permit on multiple parcels measuring a total of 7.18 acres. It's been made in conjunction with the annexation A318 that we just heard. Once again, Prairie Avenue to the north, Ramsey to the east. Here is the subject property outlined in white. Now this is where we differ a little bit than the annexation. This is the conceptual site plan for the school. As you can see here, this is Moselle as it drops down from Vantage to the north that I was just talking about. If you remember, I'll try and jog your memories, from Vista Meadows, there was a deviation to that request in R8 to allow for flexibility in design for Cedar View Avenue so that the children we're accessing the site on the north side only and not trying to cross this primary access in two different places. So the school district has been working on this for quite some time. The ball is in motion, as you would say, and Vista Meadows has already taken that into consideration. So some of these things the wheels are greased, they're just not fully signed off yet. The I's have not been dotted and the T's have not been crossed. All right, so there are three findings that need to be made for a special use permit. First is finding B8A, is that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. It does fall within the Ramsey Woodland District, and it is in the transition area. I had already read this definition into the record. I won't do it again. Here is the subject property to the north. The definition of Ramsey Woodland today as well as tomorrow, supporting neighborhoods. And the characteristics of Ramsey, density is defined here as 3 to 4 units per acre overall, pedestrian and bicycle trails and parks within 5-minute walk. Once again, there's the same comprehensive plan, goals and objectives, not fully defined here, but listed. So finding B8B is that the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. Once again, it is very flat. To the north of Prairie Avenue in Hayden are single-family homes. To the west and to the south is Vista Meadows. It's undeveloped at this time, but has been annexed into the city with an R8 designation. To the south is that large home that is currently in the county And then directly east is a remainder parcel, much like the a single one of the three that has been purchased by the district, which would be located right here, that remains in the county. Ditto on the pictures, same thing, Prairie Avenue to the north, current existing conditions that will be changed upon development of the property. The large house to the south that remains in the county, and then Vantage Drive to the north in Hayden as it would line up with Mazzell that we had just discussed. The final finding that needs to be made is that the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. Once again, there is a myriad of different agencies that come into play here. The city does not have control of all of those. The applicant is working towards getting those in place, as mentioned by the legal department. That doesn't necessarily mean that those services need to be abutting the property, but that they need to be available and of sizing to serve the property, which wastewater has said that there is capacity for this use in the future. Once again, we have the same comments from Parks, Monty McCulley, the requirement of having a 12-foot trail to the north, and that street trees will be required when a building permit is pulled. Water conditional will serve from HLID. Wastewater, sounds like at this point it's coming up through Coeur d'Alene Place 30th and through Vista Meadows. Stormwater will be taken care of at the time that it's permitted, and we'll take a look at how they are dealing with that and approve or have them change the plans at that time. Once again, the streets, it'll be accessed through the east-west through Prairie and down through Mazzell. Once again, same traffic comment from Chris Bosley is that they'll have to work with Lakes Highway District to ensure the access to the site. And Fire Department has the boilerplate language that they will ensure that the site is safe at the time of building permit issuance. So we do have a single condition that was provided by Parks, is that the 2017 Trails and Bikeways Master Plan requires a 12-foot trail along the north or along the south side of Prairie, north side of the subject property, and must be installed at the time of development. This would be the time where you had discussed possibly putting another condition in place, ensuring that those utilities are in play for development. As mentioned by legal, the parcel would sit vacant until those utilities are extended anyway. So the decision point is that Coeur d'Alene School District is requesting approval of a community education special use permit, and the decision, if approved, would allow construction of a school on the subject property. So Planning Commission must consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. That concludes my staff report. Briefly, since it's largely the same as the annexation, except for the site permit or the actual site plan. So with that, I'll answer any questions that Planning Commission may have.
I have a quick question, and this is more global. The Vista Meadows is like the drawbridge. If it doesn't drop down, what happens? Do we just watch this school site sit? Has there been a backup plan on what happens if the Kingpin drawbridge does not fall into place, that they don't get their water, they don't get their sewer from that direction? Have there been other areas that are the backup plan?
We have looked at other opportunities to possibly service the site, although as mentioned earlier, there is one piece of property here that's in the county that is currently in the county that remains kind of the linchpin between service here. Fescue Loop. This property here is zoned C17 and slated for some apartments. There is a boundary line adjustment right here where this property line is going to swing from north-south to east-west, and they are going to extend some more apartments in this area. And the requirement of the city is that they provide a to and through. So worst case scenario, they would have to make this jump right here through this property through an easement or something of that nature, or purchase a portion of that property and extend the line that way. So there is a relief mechanism, although it's not perfect and it's not 100%. There is the availability for sewer in another direction, although it does have some hinges. It's not 100%.
But we're putting so much, we're banking so much on Vista Meadows in this proposal and the way it's written, that I think it's nice to know there's a backup plan, whether it's Copper Basin doing that section or not. They seem to be flying through Keys lately, so it's good to know there's a secondary fallback.
Right.
We need the school.
Yes. One thing with a special use permit too is that it expires after a year if they don't pull a permit, or they can ask for a 1-year extension. So there's a 2-year window where it would be valid. Otherwise, they would come back to you guys again for that request.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
Megan, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I made another little short presentation. There's the, I'll swear in, sorry. Megan
Stay-
O'Dowd.
Yeah, I won't swear you in
Okay.
again. You're fine.
I think that the part that I want to focus on is a little bit of the backstory too, because I think the Vista Meadows component is an important one. For what it's worth, we have been in these discussions for months now. We had an original site concept design that was directly off of Prairie because of discussions with the highway districts. That's actually why the, let me get the site plan up. Ooh.
It's reversed.
That's not very helpful. Well, let's use our
our
imagination, but that's why the
Facing east.
access is now from the west, the internal city piece, through the extension of Cedar View Drive, because we're trying to accommodate the traffic concerns from Lakes Highway District. I mean, I guess we could explore that again, but we're trying to avoid that at all costs. So the only access that we have directly off of Prairie is the service access with it, which is a right in, right out. And again, I think Sean's point is a good one, that we can prove this as is if 1 year from now if Vista Meadows somehow completely falls through the cracks, which I don't think it will based on the conversations at least that I've been having with them on a regular basis. We'd come up with the backup plan, and we have had, we have at least explored going east, but for cost reasons, we're, using taxpayer dollars, we're trying to use this in the most cost-effective way. Vista Meadows has plans to develop this fall, and so they're the ones that we're trying to join in and cost share with them. So I have the same goals that we're meeting through this. And I'll stand for any questions, but I did just want to point out that the water, there is an existing line on the southern end of the property, but the discussion that we've had with Hayden Lakes Irrigation District is all those lines are old and they want us to upgrade it and move it to the north of the property. So we budgeted for that already. I think we will need to get formal board approval, but I don't foresee any reason why we wouldn't be getting that. And it sounds like what I'm hearing, the biggest concern would be sewer, and I think within a year, approving this as is, there's no question in my mind that we would have the Vista Meadows piece either resolved or not, and we would move to the east. But for what it's worth, I think the district is very anxious to get a property in the position where we can start moving forward as quickly as possible. We have explored several sites, and some of the backstory is facing very expensive pieces that are out of budget and without the means to build or even buy them. And then with our bond money, we're also trying to construct several other sites, and projects are coming in 30% over what we budgeted for. So time is absolutely of the essence. That's part of the reason why we are trying to push this so quickly and get it done, so we can use those dollars as effectively as we possibly can. So I'll stand for questions again. And I have the architect here and our engineer here. So we have people here that if you have other questions, Sean had a great we had a great meeting about a month ago with all of city staff departments, and Hayden Lake Irrigation District was there. We'd reached out to the Highway District. They weren't able to attend, but we subsequently attended their meeting in person anyways. And we were able to kind of tweak some of the designs, like the initial application didn't have that right in, right out in the service access, and we made some little tweaks to the bike path and things like that based on these discussions. So if you have any more specific design questions, we can probably answer those.
I have kind of a sort of philosophical design question I'm going to throw out here.
Definitely sounds
because
like a John
again,
question.
Well,
I wish that this would.
that one will work if
we could go
Sean's
to that
isn't
other
available.
Fine, it's facing east.
Sorry to belabor this, but
You've got control.
so again, we have this little finding. We have this little finding that has to be made that says that this is compatible with, compatible in character with the surrounding neighborhood. Well, the neighborhood doesn't exist yet, see? So it's kind of tough to make that stretch. Those 6 lots to the west, if those were houses that were already being lived in, would those people be in the audience tonight? Maybe of concern about this. Maybe they wouldn't think this is so compatible. Maybe you're kind of getting a pass because, this is kind of coming in while those houses don't exist. You follow me? And there's buses turning around. There's, people coming and going, that kind of thing. I guess what the fact that I believe you've worked very closely with Vista Meadows, correct? That when they sell those 6 lots, it's, they don't feel, I guess the developer of Vista Meadows isn't here tonight to suggest in testimony that this is a negative. I take that it is compatible maybe. Do you have a comment on
Yeah,
on that?
I'd hate to put words in John Butler's mouth, but I would think most developers love the idea of a school moving in right next to them because it basically guarantees their lot sales. So I think that he is more than happy as the owner of the, I don't know exactly, but 15 acres or something.
Those are the duplexes.
The duplexes are these northern ones, and then it would be single family, I think, to the south. And I see compatibility as a big picture. What is the zoning? What is the purpose? And it is a conditional use. So it's already contemplated that these R8 zones would be appropriate for a community use such as a school. We have, I was going to show, you have Sunshine Meadows, which is a fully developed.
Can you please stay at the desk so everyone at home can see what you're pointing at?
Sorry. You have Sunshine Meadows to the west, which is a fully developed existing subdivision already. You have Coeur Place, which is a huge development to the south, and then its extension is coming, closer to us, and then this will be all residential as well. So I absolutely think it's compatible, and it is a transition area too, and I think that and John could probably speak to this too, but we have to the east, we have some R3 and then C17, and it's I think a school is a great buffer between the purely residential and the more intensive commercial uses that are to the east there.
Well, Atlas School went in long before a lot of houses filled in around it. It was a bare grass field with a school in the middle of it. So it exists and it has existed. It's a good point.
I think you'll always have 1 or 2 people that object for some reason. I'm sure that's going to happen, but most patrons would be so thrilled to have a new elementary school that can be walkable by their children. And that's one of our big design concepts, wouldn't you say, is walkability and access. I'll let John give some input here.
John
Name and
Miller,
all.
714 Government Way.
Do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but
Yes, sir.
the truth, so help you God?
Okay. I would, agree with everything Megan has said. Obviously, when you look at duplexes, they might be owner-occupied duplex, but could be that they're all rental. And so, but you also have the protections of your ordinances in place. that require us to do the things that we need to do on the perimeter of the project. Obviously, we don't show any of that on this plan because we like you to be able to see everything and how it relates to what's next to this school site. And so we've worked rather hard to get everything into place. The tendency is in this day to go to smaller sites, more efficient sites, because they're easier to take care of. There's some efficiencies there, but also if you look at the price of land and what kind of burden that has placed on, you know, the funds available to purchase, it's been a big deal. And for the school district, and literally over the last, 15 months, they've been looking at multiple sites and always coming to the conclusion that perhaps not. And so this site sort of fell into place, not without challenges, but nonetheless something that we think is very developable and will, I think, respond to what is going to be an incredible amount of growth. I think you all know Coeur d'Alene Place, 500 homes to the south are coming. And so you look at the rest of the infill that's coming as well, and then you spot this school in between Skyview and Atlas. It drops in really well to serve our district. And so the board hasn't made a decision yet, I emphasize that, but the board also wants to get parcels in place and ready. And so we're the board to act on this site. The best case for opening, if we started tomorrow, would be fall of 20. And so there's a lot of things that have to kind of fall into place, and we're trying to get all that lined up. And we think we've got it, but still got a few rough patches to work our way through. But we're confident we can get there because we've done the work that we've been asked to do. And so, again, I want to echo what Megan has said. The City of Coeur d'Alene has just been fabulous in the way that they've helped us on this project and worked through it with us, help us solve problems. Multiple meetings. Hillary and Sean have been just terrific, and the individual department heads. And so really worked with us to solve problems, understanding the larger need for school facilities and what that means. So this particular site, with respect to the connection to the north, obviously, I think you all know I'm a bike ped guy. I wanted that. We talked that through in the office. But at the end of the day, the Lakes Highway District really has to come down on the side of safety. And their concern was that in this location, if I could figure out now how to do this pointer, they were very concerned with that access connecting to the bike path, that people would just pull up and kick their kids out, and they would. And if you spent some time looking at the other elementary sites around the district, there's a lot of that goes on. And so we really have to find a way to control access, get people in, get them out. We're doing some special things in terms of valet drop-off, 2 lanes of cars to pull in, kids to load, kids to unload, really a sequenced approach to traffic management that we're seeing in a lot of other parts of the country as well. And so this is something that we've worked and talked a lot about with the school district. And so this will be, if not on this site, you'll see it on another site, kind of the new next generation school. So that's a lot maybe to think about and talk about, but that should give you kind of the idea of a potential schedule with board approval and then what we're thinking about for this site. I think a clarification on the sewer, what I would say is that we had always intended to go to and through in terms of service to us, but you heard about the parcels to the east that are going to develop first, and I think Mike Becker made a decision and said they will come first and you guys can have your own service to Vista Meadows. And so that's sort of how that all came together for us. And so we don't anticipate not having some place for kids to go use the restroom. So, questions?
Questions for John? Thanks, John.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you. Thank you.
I don't think I have anything else to add unless there are other specific questions. I think that is a good point, that our board has asked us to they will make a final decision on where to build in the very near future. But having all of these decisions in place is what is helping our board make that final decision, because they need to know exactly how many final hurdles they must jump through and what the final cost will look like. And so that's what we've been trying to do, to take back to the Coeur d'Alene School Board so it can make its final decision and start breaking ground as soon as possible.
Okay, thanks, Megan.
Thanks.
And since this is the same sign-up sheet, Jeff Buller, I'm favor and doesn't wish to testify. Okay. I'm going to close public testimony and bring it to commissioners for discussion or motion.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
This matter having come before the Planning Commission on September 11th, 2018, and there being present a person requesting approval of item SP 10-18, Community Education Special Use Permit in the R8 zoning district. The applicant is the Coeur d'Alene School District, number 271. The location is 3 parcels west of Ramsey Road, located south of Prairie Avenue, commonly known as 1914, 1950, and 2008 West Prairie Avenue. The findings follow our usual boilerplate B1 through B7. B8, pursuant to section 17.09.220 special use permit criteria, a special use permit may be approved only if the proposal conforms to all of the following criteria to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. We'll follow that through, but we have a burgeoning community. We have a high demand for classrooms and schools. We will fill in our northern boundary, which, is the jagged edge. And the commission has approved multiple family dwellings and residential units, which drive student body counts. And we need to address that. And this is a good way for us to do that. Objective 4.06, public participation. We strive for community involvement in this broad-based and inclusive, encouraging public participation in the decision process. B8A, the proposal is in conformance with the comp plan. For all the reasons, we have seen huge growth in this area, and I think we need to address our schools, and this is a good way for us to do that in their location and in the vicinity of those growth areas. B8B, the design and planning of the site is compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. The site is flat, so it's easy to build on. And again, it fulfills an urgent need. We know there are parts to this puzzle that need to be addressed, and we assume that those will fall into place through the Lakes Highway District, the Hayden Water Service and Wastewater, and the Vista Meadows, the linchpin. B8C, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. And this is based on all the presentation. We have Prairie, which is a very heavily utilized area adjacent to Ramsey, which carries a huge load of traffic. C, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that Coeur d'Alene School District 271 for a special use permit, as described in the application, should be approved.
Now I have a motion by Fleming. Need a second?
Second.
I have a second by Luther. Roll call, Shannon?
Yes.
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 Okay, SP-10-18 passes. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Before I
Good
call for a
luck.
motion to adjourn, I want to make mention that there was one more item, item A-2-18, a proposed 2.5 acre annexation from county agricultural to city R1, and that has been moved to the October 9th meeting. I have the 9th. October 9th meeting. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
I have a
Speaking of the
second.
motion very
Oh,
quickly.
Go right ahead.
Very quickly, I'm wearing pink in honor of a very nice young lady whose 10th birthday is today, and that'd be Allison Mary. And secondly, I would like to acknowledge my good buddy Butch, who is probably watching this in one of those hospital beds that move up and down, but he's recovering very well. And thirdly, you did an excellent job tonight of getting people to speak, Tom. You did. you got the full participation, and that was great.
Well, thank you, and you fellow commissioners are doing a great job, and so is staff. Appreciate it, and I have a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
All right?
Aye, and good night, everyone.
Good night.